The day came when a little girl watched her family die. She watched with sadness and thought that she didn't want to die either. The Grzekai royal family. And they all had golden hair, bright as the sun, the symbol of the Grzekai. All royals have golden hair, with the exception of one, Princess Clarissa. She inherited her pink hair from her oological mother, a maid. The maid disappeared without a trace after giving birth to Clarissa, leaving the baby alone. As the princess grew older, the royal family became increasingly cruel to her. One day, while walking in the garden, a girl found some stones that she really liked because she thought they were beautiful. But to get them, she had to get dirty. Suddenly, the little girl saw her family members and thought that they usually don't walk along this road. But she had to leave quickly because if they saw her, they would scold her again. But suddenly, the main character falls and her stones spill onto the road. She realizes she needs to go pick them up, but when she bends down to pick up the stone, she feels pain, and as it turns out, her older brother kicked her. The prince asks what she's doing. The girl turns to the boy and calls him brother, then apologizes and explains that from now on, she'll be more careful. But before she could finish speaking, the man slapped her across the face. The prince asked how she dared to jump out like that, and then asked what kind of brother he was. He said she didn't dare classify him as a half-breed like her because he considered it disgusting. The queen turns to the prince and tells him to stop. Then she says it's true that the girl was rude and asks if it's appropriate for members of the royal family to be violent. Hearing this, the prince was surprised, and Her Majesty asked if he would suddenly catch something from her. Meanwhile, the main character, lost in her memories, saw how the queen who always laughed at her was executed. She looked at the prince and couldn't understand how he could be so calm. At that moment, she thought that she was afraid because she didn't want to die like that. Clarissa starts crying and says that she wants to live. At this point, the knight approached the prince, intending to execute him as well. However, the prince suggested finishing off the mongrel first. The young master says that he is not going to beg for his life, because he believes that the last surviving member of the Grzekai royal family should not be this half-breed, even if only for a few seconds. Hearing this, the girl asks for forgiveness and begs for her life. And then she saw the knight raise his sword and realized she didn't want to die like this. Well, as it turned out, the man finished off her older brother, and the little girl closed her eyes and thought about how it didn't hurt. The knight said it was a good offer. The man with blonde hair and blue eyes says that even if it makes him feel ashamed for a second, it makes him want to do it even more. Then he asks his brother if that's true. His Majesty says that there is enough entertainment and suggests that they finish with this since the smell of the red liquid is so strong that he wants to wash it off as quickly as possible. The knight turns to His Majesty and informs him that he cannot kill the princess. Hearing this, the little girl is surprised, and the surprised king asks what he is talking about, and also wonders if he said it out of pity. The man with black hair replies that Chapter 12, Paragraph 17 of the National Law, states that Gasa cannot be committed against persons under the age of 18. The knight claims that the princess has not yet reached adulthood, and therefore cannot be executed. His Majesty asks if he means to say that he will spare the royal family of the defeated nation just for the sake of observing one law. The man with black hair asks for forgiveness and says that this is not just one law, because no king in history has ever broken it. His Majesty says he knew he was so naive, but he didn't expect him to be so stubborn. Then he says that even if it's tainted blood, it's still royal, and he's also the last remaining royal. The king claims that she will grow up, and it will be very difficult to seek revenge by making excuses. And then he approached the girl, and she screaming explains that she will not do this because she does not want revenge. Clarissa says that her brother, as His Majesty said, is a half-blood, and then asks how she dares to think about the place, and says that she cannot. The girl says that if they leave her alive, she will live below the grass and quieter than water, and swears to them this, and then begins to cry. The king looked at her and said that it was so amazing, and asked why all sorts of hybrids were constantly circling around, and then said that it would be like his brother. His Majesty says he will fulfill his wish and let the child live until she turns 18. However, he must take responsibility and take her to Sheridan. The knight took the girl by the hand, and she thought that she really had not died. The king suggests that he not forget that on the day this child comes of age, He will have to cut off her head and bring it to him. The capital of the kingdom of Schiphos. A servant informed the Duke that his assistant Quentin had arrived. When the man entered, he congratulated Maximilian on his victory. He then informed him that His Majesty was disappointed and that he would return directly to Sheridan without attending the banquet in honor of the conquest. The Duke says the banquet is over and they can't leave Sheridan empty for too long. He then says he now understands why he's here and asks if he should deliver the information. The assistant objects and says that in fact, he came to tell her something else, and then says that he heard that he will take the dream princess to Sheridan. The man says he'll be frank with him, and then reveals that he's against the idea of taking her with him. The gentleman asks why. The assistant asks how he plans to raise the princess in Sheridan. The Duke says he doesn't understand what the problem is, and then asks if he thinks Sheridan doesn't have enough money and manpower to raise a child, and just one small child. The assistant, crying out, insists it's so sad, and not what he meant. Then he suggests listening carefully, saying that no matter how stoic the Duke may be, the children are utterly charming. The gentleman asks what the problem is, and he replies that if the Duke raises a tiny adorable child for several years, he will surely develop an attachment to him. The man says that this is a cute little baby feeding her and putting her to bed. Then he will watch her grow with love to her uncle and aunt, and he will watch her grow bigger and bigger. The assistant asks if he is going to kill the child he loves when she turns 18. He will cut off her head and present it to His Majesty. The Duke insists this will never happen to him, and considers attachment absurd. He claims the princess is merely a prisoner of war, and that they only avoided her execution because of the laws of the kingdom of Schiphos. The man says that even if she wasn't a prisoner, it wouldn't change anything, and then says that the people of Sheridan will love this child. The gentleman claims that this is absurd because he believes that her very existence could become the spark for the restoration of the kingdom. The aide asks if he means to say he could raise the child himself and then kill him on his 18th birthday. The Duke replies that he did, having heard the man say it would be better to kill the princess today. At this time, a girl came into their room and asked in surprise if she needed to die now. The Duke asks the princess why she came. The assistant says she wanted to see the Duke. The girl falls to her knees and then apologizes, explaining that she wasn't eavesdropping on purpose. She came to tell the man in glasses something. She says she'll pass quietly, as if she doesn't exist, and will take care not to disturb the Duke. Clarissa asks if they could reconsider their decision. The assistant says that this is not it, and he does not know anything, and at this time he felt remorse, and then leaves the office and says that he leaves this to the Duke, and claims that he clearly warned him that this is something that he cannot do. At this time, the gentleman thought that Clarissa was an illegitimate child, and judging by her actions, it seemed that she was not treated as a princess in her homeland, but nevertheless, this does not change the fact that she is of royal blood. The Duke realizes that the sight of Greskai during his march was truly horrific. Villages devastated by ongoing atrocities, children dying of hunger and disease in the streets, and soldiers begging for food from their enemies. The ruling family, wallowing in luxury and pleasure, paid no attention to such things, and he felt no sympathy for the princess of such a sellout kingdom. The gentleman turns to Clarissa Lenin-Greskai and claims that he will say it clearly that on her 18th birthday he will immediately kill her. And at this time, the gentleman thought that he could already change the expression on her face because he believed that she would probably ask him again to save her life. Hearing this, the girl was surprised and asked if he really would allow her to live until she turned 18, and then she thanked the Lord and said that she decided that he had changed his mind again. The princess says the truth is, she was always mentally prepared that someone like her wouldn't live too long. After all, her older brother always said that the first thing he would do as soon as he ascended the throne would be to get rid of the mongrels. The Duke was surprised to hear this, but the girl continued to say that her brother had said he would kill her before she turned 12. She then thanked the Duke, believing that she would now be able to live until she turned 18. The girl says that this is why she really wants to express her gratitude, and then thanks him because she considers him her benefactor. Sitting in the carriage, the main character thought that she would like someone to save her, and before leaving for Sheridan, the knight asked his servants if any of them would take care of the princess. However, they all refused with stupid excuses. At this point, the assistant wondered if it was really so unbearable to look after a child, but the master said there was no other choice, and that he, Quentin, would be responsible for protecting the princess. Hearing this, the man was surprised, and the Duke reminded him that he said he loved children and asked if that was true. Sitting in the carriage, Quentin thought about not dumping everything on him right away. After all, he understands that the Duke is undoubtedly the closest person to him, but he wonders how he can be alone with a child whom he will have to kill when she turns 18. After some time, the man does not understand why she behaves so quietly, but thinks that she may be watching his every move. Quentin realizes that he won't be able to find the right words, because being ignored for 18 years doesn't mean he won't say, haha. The man asks why there is so much dust, and the girl apologizes and says that it is because of her, because she is dirty. Quentin recalls asking the Duke to swap with him because he can't. He suggests the Duke, not him, experience the sensation of spending hours in a silent carriage. The Duke asks without a word, and then wonders if he didn't say that he would explain to the girl everything about life in Sheridan. The assistant objects and says he was going to do it, but the child kept watching her throughout the carriage ride. Then he asks how he can tell her that in Sheridan she'll be treated like a sinner, not a princess. Quentin tells the girl that when she arrives in Sheridan, she must throw away all things related to Gresakai. Then screaming suggests she remember that she's a prisoner of war and live peacefully. He informs her that birthday celebrations are strictly forbidden from now on, and she knows the reason better than anyone. The man asks the princess if she heard everything, and the Duke says he must confirm it again. He informs her that they will not treat her like a princess, that all her belongings will be thrown out, and that birthday celebrations are prohibited. He asks if she will abide by these 3 rules. Clarissa reports that she had never considered herself a princess before, and that her birthday had never been celebrated because she lived as if she were dead to everyone and had always been that way. Hearing this, everyone was surprised, and the girl asks them for only one thing, and then shows the stones that she wants to be next to her. The Duke says that he allows her to enter the Sheridan and then reminds her to be careful because the birthday party and noise are prohibited. And then he gave her the stones and suggests returning to the carriage. At this time, the main character thought that thank God the Duke was truly a kind man, because he gave her the stones that she called softies. The Duke says that Quentin will continue to be responsible for protecting the prisoner until they arrive in Sheridan. Sheridan, the northern city of the Kingdom of Shifos, and all the people came out to greet the Duke, who returned after the end of the war. The main character watched from the carriage window and thought that everyone was delighted with the Duke, and as expected, Mr. Quentin was right. The assistant says that these are the words of Duke Maximilian, and he is truly a gifted man, and if he acted as a representative of their duchy, he would certainly be the best knight in Shifos. Quentin says that the Duke has an outstanding mind with experience in any field, and in addition to everything, he has a noble status in the royal family, and there is no one who does not know Duke Maximilian. At one point, Maximilian was heir to the throne, but due to the disintegration of the Duke's outer family and other circumstances among the elders, his aide says he's such a remarkable man that women in the capital must be desperately seeking his favor, but he believes he's truly a remarkable man nonetheless. Quentin says that he is also the one who turned the once deserted Sheridan into a livable place. The princess says it's quite cold there and asks if that's true. The man replies that being in the north and very far from the capital, that's not surprising. After all, the city is mostly built of stone, and monsters have been there since ancient times, earning it the nickname, the Land of Death. But after the Duke's arrival, everything changed dramatically. He repaired the entire northern wall to prevent the monsters from approaching. He spared no effort in research and supporting the inhabitants, and therefore is considered a true guardian deity of the north. At this time, the man thought that he was very carried away, because he understood that this child was a prisoner of the Duke, and therefore believed that they needed to keep their distance as much as possible. Clarissa asks how Mr. Quentin is of any use to such a Duke, and then states that he is truly an amazing man. The assistant says that even if it weren't him, anyone could handle the paperwork, unless he's someone irreplaceable like the Golem Masters. The girl was surprised to hear this, and he said she was probably that age and didn't know about it. He then explained that, in simple terms, he was a sorcerer who could bring ordinary stones to life. They then became loyal servants to those who granted them life, obediently carrying out any command given. The colossal golem can fight magical creatures and occasionally transform into a weapon to protect people. A prime example is the Sheridan mansion they're currently heading to, which he then explains is of course just an ordinary castle. Golem Masters is currently broken. The young lady says she understands, then says that Mr. Quentin knows everything and suggests they call him simply Sir. At that moment, the Duke knocked on the window and told Quentin he had something to tell him. The gentleman said he would go check the north wall and return, and so it might take about half an hour. He suggested they go and rest. Hearing this, the assistant asks in surprise how this is possible, and then claims that he just returned and asks if he can even catch his breath. Maximilian replies that he has been absent from Sheridan for too long due to the war, and therefore believes that they cannot afford to neglect their safety in the winter when magical creatures are active. Quentin says that he understands, and then claims that he needs to return quickly because he mentioned that as soon as he returns, he will throw a party and asks if that is true. The master says the prisoner remains under his supervision. Quentin replies that this is impossible, and he asks surprised why. The assistant asks how a mere servant can remove something from the mansion without the mistress's permission. Then he explains that it's entirely within her authority. Maximilian says that he understands, and then offers to tell the Duchess that he will leave the child with her for a while, and then says that he will go north and return. Quentin asks him to be careful on the way. The assistant informs the girl that from now on, she can use the servant's staircase and explains that the central staircase is intended only for members of the Duke's family and authorized personnel. Clarissa said she'd keep that in mind. At that moment, the man thought that considering it was a child with the main staircase, it might be a bit much. But as she walked unnoticed through the gathering, the girl tripped and fell. He, surprised, asked if she was okay, and also inquired if she had heard anything. The young lady replies that everything is fine, but then says that it's a little awkward to move. He asks if the cape is interfering with her movement. Clarissa left her cape, and the man says that first she must greet the Duchess and asks if she knows the basics of etiquette. The main character remembers that the Queen taught her, and she said that a royal descendant should not lack manners and behavior. The girl does not understand why she suddenly became so scared, because she knows that the Duchess is not a queen, and she became interested in whether she will have problems if she makes a mistake, whether it will be the same as then. Clarissa noticed stones on the wall, and the man asks if she is talking to the wall. Quentin explains that this is the very mansion they talked about in the carriage, and reveals that he can transform into a golem. Compared to the royal palace, it's simple and less impressive. The young lady touches the wall and says that he is very kind and handsome. The head maid asks the master if he has returned. The man says it seems they met at an opportune time and inquires if the Duchess is in her chambers. The maid says that the mistress is currently resting, and then asks if he knows how upset the lady was, and then states how the Duke could leave immediately without even greeting his wife. The assistant explains that he will return in 3 or 4 days, and therefore suggests not to be too strict. The maid asks why he's looking for the Duchess. He replies that the child was brought from the Grezekai, and he would like to entrust her to the Duchess. The girl greeted the maid, who asked if this was the child, and then said that it would be better to wash before meeting the Duchess. Quentin smiled and said that the trip was long, so they couldn't get themselves together, and then asked if he could trust her with the child in that case. The maid says that she will go get ready, and the man invites the girl to follow Miss Bessie. The main character became interested in whether bathrooms were usually located in such places, and when Miss Bessie told her to come in, the girl was surprised by what she saw. The woman insists that from now on, she must answer all her questions honestly. She asks if the girl arrived with the Duke from Grezekai. She also inquires whether there were any women among the Duke's companions. Hearing this, the young lady doesn't understand why she's suddenly asking her about it. She replies that many knights came with her, but the woman interrupts, crying out that she's disappointed because she doesn't understand what she's saying. The maid suggests listening to her carefully, and then explains that she is talking about adult women who may have had particularly good relationships with the Duke, and not about knights or soldiers. Bessie insists that this is the lady's order, so she'll have to think carefully and tell her. Then she asks if she wants to be scolded from day one. Hearing this, The child does not understand what to do, because she believes that the adult woman, who seemed to be on good terms with the Duke, was there, but there were only knights and Sir Quentin. The little girl thinks that in situations like this, she should lie so that she gets scolded less. The maid asks her what she thinks. Now Clarissa replies that she can't tell her. She cries out and asks why the baby can't speak. Bessie asks if the Duke has already silenced her. Then she says there's no point in checking the north face, and he's already with a woman by now. Clarissa insists that's not true, since the Duke isn't here now, and she doesn't think they should talk about such things. She then says she doesn't know if there's some misunderstanding, but she believes the Duke is truly a very good man, and therefore asks them not to speak about him carelessly. Hearing this, the woman became angry, and screaming, asked, "How dare she, a prisoner of war, disobey?" She then raised her hand to hit the girl, but suddenly changed her mind and said that nothing could be done if she didn't want to talk. Bessie informs her that, as expected, she cannot allow her to see the lady. The girl objects and says that Sir Quentin said she should greet her. The maid tells her to shut up and not to whisper a word. Then she says she's a sinner and still wants to meet her after disobeying her orders, claiming it's so shameless. The woman says that she should be grateful that she was not locked in the dungeons. The next day, the Duchess tells Bessie that she heard that the child she is to take care of will arrive today, and then asks if she has arrived yet. The maid assures her mistress there's no need to worry about this. The lady, surprised, asks what she's talking about. Bessie explains that even if she and the child are prisoners of war from a defeated country, she's still a prisoner of war. Then she asks if there's any point in the Duchess worrying about something like that. She asserts that she'll take care of it, since a lady shouldn't worry about that, and neither should the Duke. Then she asks why he brought her, since she thinks it would have been better if he'd killed her right there. The Duchess grabs the maid by the hand and claims that she speaks too harshly, and then asks where the child is now, and also wonders if it is possible that she did something to her. Bess takes her hand away and tells her to leave it, then tells her that since she continues to treat her like a lady, she imagines she's become a real duchess, and then claims she's a fake. He points a finger at her, asking if she's come to her senses. The woman says that if she has time to worry about a child she doesn't even know, then she should spend it thinking about how to please the Duke. The maid, screaming, says that when he returns, he must produce an heir at all costs. Even if the marriage was forced, she asks if there's any point in pretending they're strangers for 3 years. Then she asserts that if they discover she's a fake before they have children, it's all over for Darrington, asking if she understands. The Duchess says she understands, and then apologizes. At this time, the main character, sitting alone in the room, does not understand what to do, and remembers that she made a promise to Sir Quentin, but was unable to say hello to the Duchess. The girl thought that the maid was right, because even the Duchess would not want to be with someone like her, and therefore she believed that she was really stupid because she imagined that the Duchess and Sir Quentin would treat her kindly. Clarissa believes that she is a burden that should disappear when she turns 18, and then the girl fell asleep with a stone in her hand. At that moment, the Duchess entered the girl's room, laid her on the bed, and covered her with a blanket. And then she thought she couldn't believe the maid had allowed such a small child to sleep on the cold floor. The lady understands that, in addition, the state of the premises is such that she needs to tidy it up, and therefore believes that she must demonstrate her skills after a long time. The Duchess spent the entire night cleaning the room, and in the morning she realized it was sparkling. She brought the girl some bread from her home kitchen, then stroked her hair and said she was sorry, but if she could, she would take her out of that room immediately, but she was a duchess only in name. Suddenly, the baby moved, and the woman thought that she had almost woken her up, and therefore thought that it was better for her to leave there. The Duchess believes that in any case, she cannot leave the child in such bad conditions, because she does not know what to do, since the maid will not listen to her if she tells him. Suddenly, the lady heard footsteps, and a minute later, someone grabbed her hand. She saw the Duke and was surprised. Maximilian apologizes and explains that he noticed a suspicious shadow right in front of him and therefore acted so unknowingly. She explains that it seems he misunderstood, and then asks why the Duke is here now, since she heard he would only return in 3 days. The Duke explains that he returned immediately after making sure that there were no problems with the northern wall, and then states that he cannot leave the mansion for long. Maximilian asks the lady why she's here at this time. Hearing this, she realizes it's an inevitable question, and she doesn't understand how she's supposed to explain why she was captured by the Duke and not someone else. The lady realized that maybe this was for the best, and then explained that she had a request. The next morning, the main character doesn't understand why Softy keeps waking her up. Then she says she wants to sleep a little longer. The little girl was surprised when she saw her room because it became so clean, and it was warm, and there was food in it, and she thought that a fairy had been there. Clarice asks Softy what happened yesterday because he knows and asks if it's true. When the girl heard that the Duchess did all this, she was surprised. Then she says it's possible because she thinks she's a terrible person and explains that she says the stone is lying to her. The girl touched the bread and wondered if she could eat it, but she felt hungry and then began eating. After eating one bun, which was very tasty, she wanted another. The main character thought that she mistook the Duchess for a scary person and therefore apologizes. At this point, the maid walking down the hallway thought that the little girl should have woken up by now. She thought the girl was acting like a child, but she needed to teach her a lesson so she wouldn't behave like that again. Her crying appearance also pleased her. When Bessie saw a clean room and a happy girl, she screamed and asked how she, a scoundrel, could enjoy her life and steal things like a rat, and what she did for her was not enough. The maid asks the girl what's behind her back and wants to know if she stole it, so she can't even say anything clearly. She tells her to give it to her so she can check. Clarissa replies that she doesn't want to, and at that time, she thought that she couldn't take the softie. The maid says the girl is a naughty child, and if she said so, then she should give it to her. But the little girl objects, explaining that he's her close friend. Bessie hit the girl and then took the bag from her. The surprised maid, upon seeing the stone, said she thought it was a jewel, then asked if she was making such a fuss about it and threw it out the window. The woman asks what to do now, since her dear friend was thrown out into the street. She also asks why she's acting this way, because of some stone, explaining that this wouldn't have happened if she had done as she was told. Bess tells her to wait and see that she will tell the Duke that she is disobeying and he will punish her. At this time, the Duke enters the room and asks who she will tell. Seeing the Duke, the maid was surprised, and then asked how the gentleman ended up here, since she thought he was supposed to return in 3 days. The Duke first offers to answer his question about who to tell and for what reason, and then says that now she is making him repeat it twice. Bess explains that she punished the girl because she used things from the castle as she pleased. She thinks that perhaps it seemed a little harsh, but she wanted it for the sake of the mansion and the child. The gentleman asks if she finds it amusing to break the law, and then claims that the child should grow up healthy until the age of 18, and she still beats her for discipline. The Duke asks if she intends to bear the consequences. The maid objects, saying that's not the case at all. She meant to say that she still doesn't know what excuse to come up with. The maid reported that the Duchess had ordered her to do this, and therefore she had no choice. Hearing this, the gentleman recalled that night, when he saw the Duchess, she had asked him to take care of the child. Maximilian claims that she not only broke the law, but also set up her mistress, and then orders the knights to lock the traitor in an underground dungeon. Hearing this, the maid became frightened, and then asked the Duke to forgive her and show mercy. The Duke turns to the girl and tells her to wait here because he will call her later. Clarissa apologizes, and then says that her friend Softy was thinking at that time that she should be all alone outside, and if she wants to take her, she needs to ask permission, but she thinks that she will get into trouble again. However, the main character didn't dare say it. She wondered why the Duke had said he'd call her later, and also thought he looked upset, and she wondered if she too would be sent away. The little girl thought that he would probably order her to be finished off right now. After a while, a servant tells the girl that the Duke is calling her. At that moment, she thought about climbing up. The new maid was a kind woman, and she asked the girl if the water was hot. She then explained that she was a little late in introducing herself, saying her name was Rosalie, and asking the lady if she would tell her name. The little girl replies that her name is Clarissa Lennon Grezekai. The maid says it's a very cute name. The girl is surprised to hear this, and the woman says it suits her pink hair and asks if it does. Rosalie explains that she actually has pink hair, but it doesn't suit her very well because it's quite noticeable. The young lady says she wanted sparkling golden hair, but then thinks about how awkward it would be for a princess without golden hair. Clarissa asks if pink hair is better than blonde. She explains that its color is elegant and warm, reflecting Clarissa's kindness. Rosalie asks if there's a color that would suit her better, and also wants to know what's wrong. The girl replies that Rosalie is the queen of compliments. When the maid washed the girl, dressed her, and did her hair, she was surprised at how beautiful she was. The little girl thanks the woman and asks if the Duke will be upset if she wears something so beautiful. She replies that she won't be upset, and then says that he is the one who brought her to dress her in this beautiful garment. The young gentleman asks if they're finished. Then he turns to the girl and asks if she thinks her outfit is a bit thin for this weather. The maid explains that these are the only clothes that are currently available here, and then says that she will order something warmer today. The young gentleman invites the girl to follow him, and then tells her that this is the room in which she will live from now on. Clarissa, surprised, asks if he wasn't planning to finish her off today. Hearing this, the Duke, surprised, asks what she's talking about. He claims this is the room she'll be staying in from now on, and asks if she has any problems with that. The main character enthusiastically replies that there are no problems, and he asks her to extend her hand, and then he gives it to the softie. The gentleman explains that he found it under the building, and says that apparently the maid put it in the wrong place, and he apologizes on her behalf. The girl thanked him. Maximilian gets down to business and asks how she likes the room. The little girl replies that she thinks it's too big for her. The gentleman suggests she take things more seriously. He then explains that, firstly, living on the second floor will prevent her from escaping through the window, and a good room provides psychological stability that will prevent a rebellion. It's also well insulated, reducing the risk of catching a cold. The Duke explains that, in other words, this room is actually the most ideal prison for holding a prisoner. At this point, the protagonist thought that this had a very profound meaning, as expected from the Duke. Maximilian says that it might be better to change the blanket to something lighter, because he thinks it would be unpleasant if she were crushed by the blanket before she turned 18. At this time, the little girl thought about what she wanted to say, that she thought it was too much, but she was holding back. When Clarissa was left alone, she thought it was a bit hectic, as she'd assumed it would simply be a room check, but he did much more than she expected. After all, he took her clothing measurements, checked her health, prescribed various vitamins, and so on. The main character thought that she was really happy because the Duchess Rosalia and even the Duke were all so kind, and she thought that it was perfect because she would become the best 18-year-old girl in this world. The young lady understands that in order to justify the trust of everyone who treated her warmly, she will have to not create any problems. The girl poured out stones and then asked if they would help her. All these stones came together and created Softie. Softie asks what she can do for her. The little girl says she thinks there are a lot of special stones in this mansion, and then asks if Softie can ask them about Sheridan. Stone asks why she wants this. She replies that she thinks Sheridan is getting better and better. Softie asks the girl if she's still watching the festival. The surprised little girl asks where she's been. The friend replies that she was doing what she asked for a couple of days ago, and she was asking around the stone in the mansion. Clarissa wonders if she came here after fulfilling her request, and then thanked her. Softie asks the girl if she is lonely when she leaves her alone like this, and then says that he would like her to go to this festival too. The main character says that it is a celebration in honor of the victory over the Grezekai, and she cannot go there because she believes that if she were there, no one would be happy about it. The young lady says that she is still a little jealous because she has never been to festivals or banquets before. Softie asks if she wants to dance with her. Upon hearing this, the girl doesn't understand how she's so small, but the stone says that if she doesn't want to, that's okay. Softie to dance with her. The little girl took the stone in her hands and offered to dance together, and then they began to spin. Softie said she felt dizzy. At this point, the Duchess smiled, and the man insisted it was true. She said he'd be stepping away for a moment and asked her to excuse him, then said he'd listen to the story another time. The man says that as he heard the Duchess is cold as ice, and the gentleman heard these rumors. When the lady went out onto the balcony, she thought that she barely escaped, because as expected, such a title does not suit her, and she believes that this business is too difficult for her. The Duchess thought that she so wanted to escape, and did not understand why it was so cold outside. At this time, the Duke comes up to her and gives her a cape and says that it is still cool today. When the girl saw him, She was surprised, and he said that if she wasn't feeling well, she could leave first. She objected, saying she'd just had a few drinks and was planning to return soon. The gentleman asks if that's true, and then looks at her. The lady asks what brings him here, and also asks if he wants to tell her something. The Duke looked at the girl and then apologized for disturbing her. He turned around to leave, and the girl asked him to wait a second. The Duchess said she heard he had taken care of the child, and then thanked him. She bowed and said she sincerely apologized for not being able to fulfill the Duke's request, as she believed even her maid had made a grave mistake. The lady claims it's all her responsibility. He insists it's not her fault, and therefore suggests she raise her head. The Duke says the maid will be dealt with according to established laws. The girl thanked him, and the gentleman thought that he had not come for this, since he believed that he should find out what kind of report it was. After the maid's arrest, her belongings were searched and suspicious letters were discovered. The Duke's affairs were not recorded, but this was a report detailing the Duchess's every move. Maximilian thought that he should ask her what kind of report it was. The girl asks if he could somehow prevent the Count's family from finding out about this incident. She explains that she's not asking him to hide it for the rest of his life, as she believes it wouldn't be a big deal if it were only for a short time. The Duchess says that she thinks that asking for such a thing is too much, and then apologizes, and at that time she thinks that she has no conscience because the Duke would never have granted such a request. Maximilian agrees and says that it is only temporary, and then says that at some point he has to inform them because it is illegal, and he is sure that everything will be fine with her. Hearing this, the girl thanked him and then smiled. The Duke walking down the corridor was not his usual self. A surprised Quentin asked what was wrong with him and why he was like this. He replied that everything was fine and told her not to worry. Suddenly, the assistant saw the door slightly open and asked if this was the room of the child from Grzekai, and also wondered why the door was open at such a late hour. The Duke thought that it was an uninvited guest, and when he entered the room, he saw a girl lying on the floor. Quentin ran up to the baby and then picked her up and said that she was just sleeping. Maximilian, surprised, asks what's going on. The assistant insists that nothing is happening, and that the girl apparently fell asleep while playing with the stones, and then he put her to bed. The aide says the child must have been bored after spending several days in the room. The man, surprised, asks if a child can be bored. He says it's been a while since she was here, so he thinks she must be recuperating. Quentin insists she's definitely recovered, because when children wake up, they're full of energy. The Duke asks if this means the child also needs outdoor activities. He replies that it's true. The next day, Rebecca put a warm coat on the girl and told her they could now go outside. The girl was delighted to hear this, and when the Duke saw her, he said nothing. Quentin thought she had a round face and was a cutie, a real snow bunny. He knew now was not the time to be touched. Quentin asks why they had this suit made for them, because he thinks they should be grateful to the tailors who had to come here. Clarissa thanks the gentleman for giving her a warm prison uniform. He says it's good the clothes are ready and informs her that, starting today, she can enjoy outdoor activities. The Duke says all prisoners must maintain their physical and mental health by engaging in outdoor activities for a certain amount of time, and she is no exception. The little girl says that from now on, she will go outside every day and make her body stronger, and then asks what exactly she should study. At this point, the gentleman reflected on how he'd never done anything but fencing. He then turned to his assistant, who told him that when he was little, he used to collect beetles and frogs. Maximilian reminds him that it's winter now. Quentin thinks for a moment and says that when it snows, children build snowmen, and recalls how they used to compete to see who could build the biggest one. Quentin invites the girl to participate in a competition and build a snowman on behalf of their mansion. Hearing this, she agrees, thinking about how she'll be the castle's leader and can't believe she'll be able to do anything for the mansion. The little lady asserts that she will work hard for the Duke's honor. He turns to Gasoline and asks to be driven to the courtyard. At this time, the knight remembered the Duke's words, that she would be treated as a sinner no matter what, and thought that the master was also very indifferent to such a small child. Benson tells her to stop. The girl, surprised, asks why he stopped her. The knight tells her to be careful on the stairs so she doesn't fall. Then he offers to carry her. The young lady thanks him for his concern, and then asserts that she will go down herself, When the girl went outside, she saw that the entire yard was snow white, and when she took a few steps, she realized that traces remained and considered this incredible. Clarissa enthusiastically says that it's a lot of fun, and at that moment, she thought that it was not the time to play, since the first task that the Duke gave her had to be completed. The main character believes that on behalf of the mansion, she's supposed to build the biggest and coolest snowman. However, she doesn't understand what a snowman is, as she comes from a warmer climate and has never seen snow, making this her first experience. The girl doesn't understand what she needs to do and thinks that she needs to first check with the guards, but she doesn't know who to ask. She approached the stones, then greeted them and asked how they were doing. The stone asked if she was the prisoner the guys from the inner wall had spoken of. Suddenly, the stone turned into a little man, and the girl asked in surprise if he knew who she was, because she thought they had met for the first time today. The man says his minions raised a ruckus after her arrival, and then asks how he couldn't know. He says she wasn't mistaken, as the guards of the outer wall, are different from them, and asserts that there will be no mercy for the prisoners. The guard says that if she even thinks about trying to escape, the girl interrupts him and asks what escape he's talking about. She insists that she would never, under any circumstances, do such a terrible thing. The man says that in that case, if she doesn't want to run away from there, then he wonders why she called him. Clarissa asks if he knows how to build a snowman. He asks, surprised, if that's what he came to see her for. The main character explains that she needs to build a snowman for the mansion, then reveals that she's never done it before. She asks if maybe he doesn't know how either. Hearing this, the man screams and tells her not to compare him to her, then asks how he can't do it. The girl asks him to teach her. The guard objects and says he'll be helping the captive. The little girl asks him to tell her how he claims she's being too loud and has left him no choice and doesn't understand what to do. The guard waved his hand, and with the help of magic, the bell began to glow. He asked the girl if she was surprised, and then offered to demonstrate the might of the Outer Wall Legion. The man says that he is the guardian of the mansion, and she, since the captive is freely roaming around the area, orders the bell to be immediately rung twice. The main character was surprised and didn't understand whether it usually sounded like that, because she thought there would be a lot of noise. Meanwhile, the castle guards are confused about whether the bell has rung. Another knight suggests they ignore it, believing it's likely another false alarm. In any case, it's pointless now, so they simply suggest they ignore it. The guard tells the girl to trust him and just go back. When the little girl arrived in her room, she asked the soft if she was asleep. The little doll asked if she had been called, then inquired about what had happened, and suggested not to think too badly of the wall guard. Soft says that this guard faithfully guarded Sheridan for many years, and much longer than people. It is not an exaggeration to say that they were proud of it. However, over time, magic tends to fade to such an extent that now they are not even able to ring the bell, and the fact that people consider them useless definitely lies a heavy burden on them. Clarissa says she understands they're not going through all this for her. The doll insists it's not Clarissa's fault, and asks why she asked the guardian how to make a snowman. The little girl explains that the Duke asked her to do this, and then says she needs to place it in front of the mansion. Softy says this is great news, as she believes decorating the courtyard with a mansion is something special, because it means the child is growing up healthy. The main character asks if she means her. The doll asks who else, but Clarice could it be? She says it's a tall order for Sheridan's walls, and so when she builds a perfect snowman, the guardian of the outer wall will undoubtedly be pleased too. The young lady asks if she really thinks so, and then says that she must do everything in her power. Softy says she will teach her how to sculpt it. The next day, Clarissa thought about how she was doing everything exactly as the software had shown her, and she wondered if it was exactly how it should look. She had this feeling that something was missing. The main character remembers that Softy told her that the snowman needs to have hands, and that people usually use branches for this. The girl ran for dry branches, and when she found them, she accidentally saw a lady with silver hair, and thought that she was a fairy, and said with delight that she was very beautiful. The lady says she was looking for the branches, then apologizes for stepping on them, and then asks if she needs anything else. But the girl interrupts her and says, "It's okay." Clarissa remembered that Softy said that the Duchess was very beautiful and had sparkling silver hair and blue eyes. And then she asked the lady if she was the Duchess. The little girl says she's sorry if she disturbed her while she was going somewhere. Hearing this, the mistress objects and says she has nothing to apologize for. Benson, calling her the Duchess, said she would go then and asked if she could keep their meeting a secret. The little girl promised, and the Duchess thanked her. Clarice tells the gentleman that she is there, and when she sees the Duke, she is surprised. He asks where she has been and why she hasn't answered, even though he has been calling for her for a long time. The little girl explains that she was looking for a branch to stick into the snowman, and at that time mentally apologized for the lie. The gentleman says that as soon as she finishes it, she should go inside and tell Benson to put the snowman in front of the mansion. The girl apologizes and asks the Duke if she can stay here a little longer and come back later. She says that actually, today is Mr. from the Outer Walls Day. And at that time, the main character remembered her brother's words, that if she talks to stones, then she should not tell anyone about it, because everyone will point their fingers at her and call her not only stupid, but also crazy. Then Clarissa explains that she just wanted to explore the yard a little more and says that she will bring them a snowman. The master tells her to return before sunset. After a few hours, the girl thought that she was sure that even the gentleman from the outer wall would be happy to see this snowman. The little girl ran up to the wall and asked Mister's advice, saying she was there to show him something. However, there was no answer, and she thought maybe he was resting. After all, Softy and the inner wall sometimes sleep too. The main character doesn't understand whether she should come back next time, but she understands that she can't wait to show them the snowman. The girl touched the wall and suddenly saw that Mr. Guardian was asleep. He woke up and asked what was going on, then said it wasn't even a full moon yet, and asked where this powerful magic came from. Clarissa says she's glad he woke up, but when he saw her, he thought she was a prisoner and thought it was impossible for this little girl to wake him up. The little girl says that she made a snowman and says that the inner wall said that if she shows him the snowman, he will be happy. Hearing this, the guard cries out, claiming it's a stupid inner wall that was simply talking nonsense to the captive. He claims these inner walls have always been like this, believing that living in a warm environment must have melted even pride, no doubt. The main character tells him not to say that, because she thinks the inner walls are trying to help her. He suggests they go inside and play with these fools. The guardian says he will tell her that no snowman she makes will bring him joy, and then tells her not to infuse magic into him without permission, especially if she does not intend to be bound to him for life. The girl was surprised to hear him, and he couldn't understand why she wasn't responding. The little girl apologized and then said she had to go. The stone guardian thought the form was overflowing with magical power. Softy asks why he's not asleep yet and explains that she just dropped by before bed. She also asks if he already has that magical power from Clarissa, and explains that she hasn't received it yet and is therefore jealous. The man says he can't even sleep because of her. She says he was kind to Clarissa, and then asks if he knows how happy she was today because of him. Softy claims that when he likes people, he starts acting out of character. The guardian claims he hates people because they're so weak that they die quickly. She asks if that's why he's afraid of children. The doll says that Clarissa is truly a wonderful child, and then asks if he knows it too, because he thinks that they don't have much time left and will soon turn into ordinary stones. The guardian says it's even better than waiting for the master who will never return. Hearing this, she suggests not mentioning something that will disappear so easily and declares that she wants to live. The man says they've lived long enough defending this mansion and suggests she be quiet because he saw a strange man. He thinks he's an intruder and suspicious. Softy says that now is not the time to stand by and that he should ring the bell. He asks surprised what she's talking about and also wonders why he should ring the bell since he believes the knights will take care of it, and he's confident. The doll asks what he is saying and then claims that he is also a knight who must protect this mansion. The guard tells her to be quiet, then asks if she understands yet and tells her that his bell is now useless, as ringing it will only make him a laughingstock. He then asserts that he no longer wants to be a fool to people. Softy says that maybe this time everything will be different because Clarissa gave him her magic. The guardian asks if she's serious and also inquires if she wants him to use her. Then he says it's impossible for him to work on the magic of a little girl who isn't even a master. She asks if he's going to stand there and watch and asks if he's ashamed as the knight of this mansion. The guard agrees and says she'll do it. The man says the bell is the guardian of the outer side and warns that there are uninvited guests there, suggesting that it ring twice. At that moment, the bell lights up, and the softy, surprised, says it's wonderful. The guardian thought it was incredible to see the emission of this light again. Quentin tells the Duke that the bell is ringing again, and reports that he heard it ringing falsely earlier today. When the bell rings, once it means trouble is inside the mansion, 3 times means trouble is in the city or village, and twice in the courtyard or near the mansion. It rings when an uninvited guest appears or a prisoner escapes. The Duke says he'll go and check everything personally. The aide is surprised to hear this, then says that in any case, nothing happened and therefore His Grace has no need to go there. The gentleman says that he never knows what might happen and claims that he has no need to send knights because he will check it himself and return. When the Duke left, he thought that now was the time for the patrol to guard the front gate because he understood that if they got in or escaped, they would head to the back garden. Suddenly, Maximilian sees the intruder and wonders why he's in this position, thinking his clothes are caught on something. He also thinks he didn't even notice him, and judging by his carelessness, he thinks there's no point in calling the knights. The Duke asks who he is, and then says that he does not know what his purpose is here, but now that he has been discovered, he cannot deny what he is planning. The gentleman recognized it as the Duchess, and surprised asked how she got there. At that moment she fell, but he grabbed her. The lady apologizes and explains that she'll get off right away. He suggests she calm down, and then informs her that if she rushes too much, she'll get hurt. Maximilian picked up the girl and then carried her inside the mansion. She apologized anxiously. The gentleman assures her that everything is fine, and besides, she's already apologized 10 times. He asks if he can examine her leg. The Duke says that as he thought, she is all swollen, and says that first aid should be provided, and says that he will bring medicine and bandages from his room and asks her to wait. When the girl was left alone, she thought that she had not even noticed this door and thought that it connected them with the Duke of the room, and after the wedding, she never used it and completely forgot about it. The Duchess thought it would be strange if she were of any use to her. After all, after this forced marriage, they had lived like strangers for 3 years. She felt it was not the time to think about such things, as she couldn't understand how she would explain everything to the Duke when he returned. The girl understands that he clearly suspects something is wrong, but she doesn't think she can tell him the whole truth. She thinks she'll somehow get out of it. Bassie has been spying on her all this time and passing the contents of her letters to Mr. Darrington. However, she understands that if the letters suddenly stop coming, they will find it suspicious. So the Duchess tried to imitate Mrs. Bassie's handwriting as much as possible, but she was caught on the way back after sending it. She believes that keeping silent will only make things even stranger, and she realizes she needs to justify herself somehow. At this time, a gentleman entered the room, and the lady thanked him for even bringing the medicine. The Duchess says that she will do everything herself, but he objects and explains that it will not take much time, and suggests that she be patient for a little while. The lady turns to him, but he interrupts her and says that if she wants to ask for forgiveness again, she doesn't have to do it. The girl says she feels she needs to explain where she went today. Then she explains that she was in the village because of a letter she wanted to send to a friend back home, but she completely forgot the day she promised to do it and had to leave immediately in the middle of the night. The Duchess explains that's why she couldn't warn him. He asks if she told him about a friend from home. At that moment, the girl thought about how he'd been tested, but she thought that was a good thing, but her conscience bothered her. Maximilian tells her to just contact him next time because he can deliver the letter, and then he says that there is no need to hide anymore because he knew everything from the very beginning. Having heard this, the girl was surprised, and then asked what he was talking about, and at that time, she thought that he meant that she was being followed or that everything was about her. The Duchess recalls being told to simply pass on to Sheridan. The gentleman explained that he simply couldn't send his beloved daughter to this cold north, and therefore suggested she pretend to be her and marry the Duke. The man says that in exchange they will cure her sick mother. At this point, the girl thought about how she couldn't tell him anything, because if he found out she'd been exposed, he wouldn't be able to cure her mother. She felt she had to hold out at least until her treatment was complete. The Duke claims that he knows everything about the fact that she already has a loved one, and then asks what kind of girl would want to be forced into marriage, because he himself understands that. The gentleman says that moreover, she already had a loved one, and at that time, the girl thought that this was a terrible misunderstanding. Maximilian explains that he wants to annul their marriage, and explains that he's been thinking about it for a long time. But right now, it's impossible because the king and queen are watching him. He then announces that within a few years, she will be free. The Duke tells her not to worry, as he will do everything, so as not to harm her or her family. The gentleman says that he must leave already and wishes her good night. Meanwhile, the lady reflects on how she never imagined the Duke would entertain such thoughts, but she believes it's even better for her. After all, if this marriage is successfully dissolved, then Mr. Darrington will have no recourse, and there will be plenty of time for her mother to recover. The girl thought that this was what she wanted most of all, but she didn't understand why she was so sad. Meanwhile, Bessie, sitting in the dungeon, doesn't understand why there's still no news from her. She knows her mother is being held hostage, but she thinks the girl should get her out, because she needs to send letters. The maid thought that this girl could write meaning. She could send letters on her behalf. And at that moment, I realized she would be stuck there for the rest of her life. Bessie saw Lord Benson, and screaming said that she wanted to tell him something, and asked him to listen to her. The knight says that this is impossible, and then says that if she wants to say something, she should pass it on through the overseer. The maid screams and announces that the Duchess is deceiving the Duke hearing. This Benson, surprised, asks what she just said. Rosalie asks the girl if she can come in. The little girl offers her entry. The maid announces that it's lunchtime. Clarissa shows the woman the drawing, and she asks in surprise if the girl drew it and says that it turned out very beautifully. The little girl thanked her and explained that they were her lunch friends. The woman was surprised to hear this. The main character thanked the maid for coming to lunch today, and then wished the children bon appétit and thanked Rosalie for the food. The maid explains that it's her duty. Rosalie apologizes and then informs the Duke that children should eat with adults to learn proper posture and speech. Therefore, she believes Clarissa needs adults to set a role model for her. The Duke asks if ethics lessons are necessary, then it is possible to hire a tutor, and therefore does not think that there is a need for his presence. The maid shows the master the drawing and invites him to look at it. Then she explains that today, the little girl sat at the table with this drawing and said that these were her dinner friends. Rosalie says that if this continues, it will harm her mental health, and she wants to ensure she grows up a healthy child. At this point, the assistant interrupts hers. Quentin says that if the Duke can't, he's wondering if he can go in his place. He says that if the Duke doesn't mind, he can accompany Clarissa. After all, they already know each other. The maid says that would be very nice, and then asks if he has a lady to accompany him. She shows him a drawing and says it depicts a couple and thinks it would be advisable for him to come with a lady. Rosalie asks if he doesn't have a single girlfriend. Quentin explains that he doesn't have anyone suitable because he's only been studying since childhood, and after coming to this house, all he does is work around the clock, and building a relationship takes time. The next evening, Maximilian tells the Duchess that they haven't met yet. He explains that Duchess Sheridan is his wife, and this girl is Clarissa. The little girl greeted the lady and said it was an honor to meet her. The lady replied that she was also pleased to meet them. Then she pointed and said that it was a secret that they had already met. The Duke invited them to sit down and begin their meal. At this point, the main character thought she couldn't believe she would be eating with the Duke and Duchess. At the same time, she was very excited but confident. It would be a lot of fun. Sitting at dinner, the girl doesn't understand why the atmosphere is so gloomy, but she thinks maybe that's how it's supposed to be. And because of her nervousness, she can't even taste the food. At this time, Benson entered the room, and when he saw the Duchess, he remembered that the maid said that she was a fake. He asks Bessie what kind of nonsense she's talking about, but she insists it's hard to believe, but it's true. Then she reveals that she's a fake secretly planted by Mr. Darrington. She came along with her for observation. The maid explains that because of a feeling of guilt before the Duke, she tried to tell him everything, but this girl caught her and demanded to lock her up, and therefore asks to believe her, because she considers it so unfair. The guy asks in surprise how this is possible. She tells him she thinks the Duke has noticed something too, because he's recently started avoiding her, and asks her to keep a close eye on them, as she believes he'll definitely sense something strange. Benson doesn't understand why he didn't notice anything until this moment, and he wonders if their relationship had always been so frosty. He doesn't understand how they can eat together and never look at each other. The Lord thought that Clarissa was also uncomfortable because of this. The Duchess asks the little girl if everything is okay, and then tells her that some vegetables with a strong smell have been added to the dish, and that is why she is worried that because of this she cannot eat it. The girl objects and says that she can eat it, but the lady says that if she doesn't want to, then she shouldn't force herself. Clarissa says everything is fine and delicious, then suggests watching her eat. She says she likes meat too, but she absolutely adores corn and potatoes. The Duchess says she loves it too, and thinks they're alike. The little girl asks what she likes outside of food, and she replies, "Embroidered letter," and then says she can't think of anything else, which makes her a little awkward. The girl asks, "What about the Duke?" and also inquires if she likes him. Hearing this, the lady is surprised. Clarissa asks if she said something wrong, and then wonders if spouses shouldn't love each other. The lady says she's right, and of course she likes the Duke very much. The little girl tells the Duke that her mistress said she likes him, and then asks if he likes her. He explains that during meals, one should focus on food, and at that moment, he recalls the maid's words about how conversation during meals is beneficial for developing a child's values. Maximilian says he likes the Duchess too. The lady was surprised to hear this, and Benson was surprised too. The Duke asks if he has any problems. Benson replies that he has none, then explains that he's simply a role model for all spouses and smiles. At this time, the knight does not understand who said that they have a bad relationship and does not understand what he was thinking at all and considers himself a fool. Clarissa was the first to go to her room, and the Duchess thought that she had somehow managed to avoid disaster. The Duke thanked her for her support during lunch and then said she must have been very surprised. The lady replied that she wasn't at all, since Rosalie had told her everything, and then added that she too wanted to help in some way. At this point, the lady doesn't understand why she feels so uncomfortable and thinks it's because this is their first meeting since that day. She understands that it's logical that they'll be awkward, given that they had to say something like that. The Duchess thinks that the Duke has not paid attention to this, and then apologizes and asks if she can go as she still has things to do. The man asks her if she's going to write another letter. He tells her who she sent the letter to that night, then apologizes and asks her to forget what he said. The Duchess thought that so much time had passed, and there were many thoughts in her head, so she decided to take a walk and ended up returning quite late. The ladies do not understand why the Duke said that he is still worried about that incident. Suddenly, the grandfather saw the letter and thought that it was not there before she left. This letter was written by the Duke, and he asked for forgiveness for what happened, because he did not want to accuse her of anything, because he believes that she has every right to communicate with whomever she wants. The Duchess thought that it seemed that he was really interested in her answer, and thought that she should answer him since it was not a love letter, and she was not in a position to share her heart with anyone. The lady writes that she wishes to clarify this misunderstanding. Standing outside the door, the Duchess thought about what to write. She'd already written it, but she couldn't figure out how to give it to him. She wondered if he might find it odd that she'd chosen to respond. But she believed that, even if that were the case, she couldn't allow this misunderstanding to remain between them forever. The girl thinks that this will simply solve the problem of misunderstanding, and that's it. And then she knocks on the door and asks if the Duke is in. The lady doesn't understand whether it's normal that she let her hair down and thinks that she should have combed it better. But at that moment, she realized that she was wearing a nightgown and thinks that this is unacceptable. The Duchess saw the door opening and then screaming suggested not to open it. She extended her hand and said that she simply wanted to give him a letter. Maximilian says he didn't expect her to give it to him. The girl says that even if it's just a contract marriage, she can't allow such a misunderstanding between them. The man apologizes for his selfishness, and then says that he assumed that she had someone for whom her heart yearned even 3 years ago at the moment when she came to him. The Duke explains that he thought she was yearning for someone, and therefore believes he was too hasty in his judgments. The girl thought that if it had happened 3 years ago, then she might understand why he thought that. Then she said that the most precious thing in her life was her mother, who protected her and loved her like no one else could, and that love was so strong that it couldn't have been stronger. And at this time, the lady does not understand what she is talking about because she thinks that he is not interested in all these details. The gentleman says that he believes that her mother noticed this on her part, that she also loves her very much. Hearing this, the Duchess thought he was a wonderful man, perhaps a bit too straightforward at times, but very sensitive, and his manners and warmth amazed her. The silver-haired lady remembered the little girl's words and thought that she was right. And last night, the gentleman thought that he was very tired. And suddenly, he saw a letter in which it was written that the Duchess sincerely thanked him for listening to her yesterday. The lady writes that if this suits him, then they can continue to write letters to each other, and she will also understand if he refuses. At this time, the guy thought that it was good that he wrote first, because he thinks that perhaps it was just his imagination that they were getting closer. The knight turns to the master and asks for forgiveness, and then says that no matter what he says, he will not answer. Maximilian claims everything is fine, and then asks what's wrong. Benson shows him the vacation application. Seeing this, the gentleman is surprised and asks why, so suddenly then explains that it's already the end of the year. The guy explains that he had actually forgotten about this too, because he knows that most of the applicants are married and probably want to spend the end of the year with their wives. The Duke says he will look at them tomorrow and offers to pass them on to Quentin and then thank him for notifying him. Benson thought that he had been serving the Duke for many years, but he saw his smile for the first time. At this point, the main character doesn't understand why the Duke would summon her so suddenly. She thought about how she brushed her teeth, washed her hands, and even ate her vegetables, but still couldn't understand why she could be scolded. The gentleman invites the girl in and then says that they are meeting for the first time since dinner and asks how she is doing. The little girl, screaming, says she brushed her teeth, while her hands were nice and even ate vegetables. He says she's a good girl and explains that nothing important, and that he simply called her to tell her that at the end of the year she'll have to go to the North Face. Clarissa was surprised to hear this. He explained that at the end of each year, Sheridan held a fireworks festival on the North Wall to cheer up the people living in such a dry place and inspire them to a brighter future, and that's why he wanted to ask her if she would go. The girl, surprised, asks if she can join in. Maximilian replies that not only he, but almost all the residents of the mansion will be empty, so it would be nice for everyone to go together. But if she doesn't want to, he won't force her. Clarissa says that if it doesn't bother him, she'd like to go too. The gentleman says no problem and thanks her. Hearing this, the main character does not understand why he is thanking her. Assistant Quentin excitedly announces that he'll finally get to see the New Year's fireworks festival. He can't imagine anyone would have thought their Duke was such a romantic and would invite him to go first. He thinks it's something he'd never dream of seeing, since he thought he'd just sit and work this time. Maximilian tells him to calm down, and then explains that they're not just going to have fun. The assistant says that due to a recent request from the wizarding community, they'll be going to the North Wall, and asks if that's true. Quentin says he was quite surprised when they received a request from the wizards for permission to investigate the case of the fallen golem. The Duke says too much time has passed to begin an investigation. And 10 years ago, monsters penetrated the northern walls, and the loss of both the senior mage and the king was truly tragic. The master says that due to the death of the golem master wizard, the colossal golem fell. 2 corpses were buried beneath the golem, giving it the name Fallen Golem. After this incident, the relationship between the magicians and the royal family worsened. The aide asks if permission for an investigation can be granted in this case, as he believes greater scrutiny is needed with regard to the royal family. He then asks if one can be sure the investigation will be conducted properly. Maximilian says that the remains of a golem cannot be touched, unless he is a master, but he believes that there is still hope, because they say that the son of the deceased senior magician is doing this research, and his name is Sinnett. Although this guy is not a golem master like his late father, despite being 11 years old, he was in the top 5 wizards. The gentleman says that his plan is to go to the North Wall and meet him. At this point, the man looked at his plate full of food and said that he hadn't eaten again and was wondering if everything would be okay. He understood that they couldn't starve him, but he himself was refusing to eat. Mr. Nelson says they'll all thank him for saving them the dirty work by dying himself. He then claims he dared to study the golem himself and take all the credit. He asks how he's not ashamed to live after killing his own mother. Nelson says that they will leave everything as is and go, because he understands that they need to hurry to the north face. At this time, the boy remembers what the old man told him, that he should go north and investigate the fallen golem, because he knew that only he could find what was hidden inside it. Sinnott apologized to his mentor and said that he could not fulfill his last request, because he believed that a monster like him had no right to do so, and then threw down his magic stone. Meanwhile, Softy asks the girl how much she wants to go to the north face. She replies that it's her first time seeing fireworks and can't believe she'll be traveling, making her very excited. The girl says that a book she read says that if you go to a new place, you can make new friends, and so she believes she'll be very happy to make friends with anyone there. Benson informs Mistress Clarissa that he's no longer there, and when she saw the north wall at Sheridan, the girl was surprised, because it was very beautiful and completely snow-white. The knight suggests that the lady be careful, because the road is slippery, and therefore offers to hold his hand. Maximilian offers his hand to the Duchess, who thanks him. The girl, seeing this, says they have a very wonderful relationship, and the gentleman suggests they quickly go inside. The man says this is her room for the duration of her stay, then explains that it's inferior to the castle room, but won't cause any discomfort. He asks if she remembers the safety precautions for her stay. Clarissa says that she should not catch a cold and wear only warm clothes outside, and that she can rest in the fresh air, but she can't climb the wall, and Benson should always accompany her. The Duke says he has an appointment and will go first. The little girl asks why he's so early, and he asks if she has any problems. She replies that everything is fine, then explains that they just got here and have been working all this time. The girl says she thinks the Duke is very tired. Then she looks at him and apologizes for saying too much. He assures her everything is fine and suggests she rest. When Clarissa was left alone, she thought that she was such a fool because she couldn't say such presumptuous things to the Duke, and he probably thought that she was crazy. The little girl remembered that she had put the softy in the bag and then takes it out and apologizes because she thinks that she must have been very stuffy. Softy says she was very noisy and doesn't understand why she took the stone with her. The little lady says she picked up this stone on the way too. The man says that they need to check the wheels and therefore suggests taking a short break. Meanwhile, the main character has received permission to play around the area. After walking around for a bit, she realizes there are almost no stones, and she's very sorry about that, but suddenly she sees one and thinks it's very beautiful. Clarissa explains that she took it because she thought it was unusual. Then she asks what she means by noisy. The stone speaks to the girl and asks if she can hear it. The little girl, surprised, asks if it's a talking stone. He says it's a relief because he thinks she can actually hear him. The stone apologizes for being so sudden and says that he has a request for her, and then says that Noah, his friend, is in great danger and that bad wizards have taken him prisoner and locked him in a cart. Pebble says Noah hasn't eaten or drunk anything for several days and thinks that if he's left like this, he'll simply die, so he asks her to save Noah. At this time, the gentleman remembered the girl's words and thought about who should worry about whom, and he wondered if she knew anything about his situation. However, if you think about it, he thinks the little girl has always been like this, even knowing she's supposed to die at 18, and she laughs so loudly as if she has no worries. Maximilian thought he was truly overtired. Then he walked in and was greeted by a man who said they were waiting for a gentleman. The magician says his name is Alfie Nelson, and he thanks the Duke for responding to the request for research. The young gentleman says that he also has something he would like to find, and therefore considers it a two-way street, and then states that he does not see anything in it. Hearing this, the magician thought that, as expected, he was not so simple, and then said that he was just about to say that he did not show up. The Duke asks what he means by he didn't show up, and then says that he was definitely notified that Noah Sinnett would be participating in the investigation. Alfie explains that because of what happened to Yona, as his mentor, the whole situation changed slightly, and as he probably knows, his mentor passed away, and that became the reason he had to take responsibility for this research. The magician says that no matter how good Noah is, he's still a child. He believes such an important task should be taken on by an adult, and therefore believes this would be the safest option for the master. Therefore, he believes he shouldn't worry and suggests they begin their meeting. Maximilian states that in this case, he cannot give consent. The pebble tells the girl that Noah is locked in the cart and asks her to get him out. At this point, she thinks she doesn't know who this guy is, but she figures that since he's asking her to do so, and to the pebble, he seems like a very precious friend. The girl suggests waiting for her because she will definitely pull Noah out. The main character doesn't understand how to get there because she doesn't even know where the cart is. Benson, surprised, asks the little girl what she's doing near the door. When she sees him, she's surprised, but he tells her she looks worried and asks if he can help her in any way. At this point, the lady doesn't know what to do and considers telling him everything honestly and asking for help. However, she realizes that doing so would force her to admit that she speaks to the stones. Clarissa replies that it's outdoor recreation. Then she says she wants to see the carriage the wizards arrived in since she saw in a book that it could fly. The man asks if she just wants to look at the wizard's carriage, and at that moment, he thinks that they don't fly and says that, unfortunately, he's not sure if it's possible to do that now because the wizards are at a meeting. The knight suggests they go see them after the work is done. The girl asks if they can go right now and looks at the gentleman very sweetly. He says he thinks it's fine if they do it quickly, and then offers to follow him. The man shows the girl the wizard's carriage and then says that it looks nothing special. At this time, the main character looked at the guards and thought that these were knights who guarded the castle wall, and they were very different from the Duke's knights because they looked frightening. Suddenly, Clarissa saw the knight walking toward her, and she couldn't understand why. She wondered if she'd done something wrong, then grabbed the man by the cloak and apologized. The guard asks where her manners are, since it is obvious that she is from a noble family. The guard asks Benson if the Duke had an adult daughter, and he wonders if that is possible, and then says that the child is his prisoner and suggests not to get too close. The man asks if this is a prisoner living in the Duke's house. Could she be from the Grisekai family? Then he says he doesn't know what kind of problems adults have, and considers being so nice to be a real crime. The gentleman says that if being cute is a crime, she should be in prison for life. Benson tells her to ignore them. At this point, the main character realized they weren't as scary as she thought. Meanwhile, the pebble asks her to hurry and tells her that Noah is in a wooden cart and has a bad feeling about it. Clarissa ran quickly, and the knight asked in surprise where she was going. The girl ran up to the cart and asked if it was really her. Stone replied that there could be no mistake. The main character climbed onto the cart and told Benson to look there, because there was an unconscious child there. At this point, the Duke asserts that he cannot give his consent and explains that he intends to do so, but only if Noah leads the investigation. He states that if he doesn't, they should start negotiations from the beginning. The magician claims that Noah is still not ready, because after the sudden loss of his mentor, he still cannot recover. At this point, Benson tells the Duke he has an urgent message. The gentleman invites him in, and the man apologizes, believing it's truly important, and whispers in his ear. The gentleman asks if this is true. The knight claims he personally checked everything. Maximilian screams and says that then they should listen to an explanation of why Noah, who allegedly did not arrive at the meeting, was locked in the cart. At this point, the boy was taken into a room and then warmed up. However, he was still unconscious, and so was put to bed. Clarissa asks if he's in pain, and then says she doesn't see any wounds. The Duchess asks if she's saying he was locked in the carriage for several days straight. Then she says that, if that's true, he must be very exhausted. The lady thinks that the problem is that they can't do anything now. The little girl says that this won't work, and thinks that if he takes off the mask, it will be more comfortable for him. But suddenly, the Duchess stops her and suggests that she wait since she believes that Clarissa cannot do this without receiving permission. When the girl touched the boy, he woke up and then screamed and told her to take her hands away. Clarissa apologizes and then explains that she just thought he was uncomfortable with her. At this time, the boy does not understand where he is, and he began to wonder if he was in the cart, and then he used his magic. The Duchess tells the girl to move away because she thinks it is dangerous. Benson enters the room and, seeing the empty bed, asks what happened. The Duke asks if they're saying Noah has disappeared. The knight explains that, when they entered, there was no one in the room except the mistress and Clarissa, and it seems he may have fled, frightened by the situation. The little girl says it's her fault because she touched Noah's mask. Then she says she didn't know he'd hate it so much. The Duchess strokes the girl's head and tells her that she shouldn't be so sad, since she believes that she did it out of a desire to help him. The lady claims that Clarissa must have been very frightened too, and suggests she rest in her room. The Duke orders them to thoroughly search the mansion inside and out. When the little girl was alone in the room, she wondered where he could have gone. At that moment, the pebble said that it felt the boy somewhere nearby and was even sure of it. Hearing this, the main character thought that there was no one in the room, and when she opened the window, she saw a guy sitting in a tree. Clarissa asks Noah if he was there the whole time, and then says that she was worried. The girl saw that the guy was going somewhere, and she asked if he was leaving again, and then asked him not to leave, and at that time she climbed out the window. But suddenly, the little girl felt that she was falling, and then she saw a guy who grabbed hers. Noah tells her to be careful, and then asks what she will do if she gets hurt. At this time, Clarissa saw a man who said that Noah was a special child, and that someday a friend would definitely appear who would see his true appearance. The main character thought that this was Noah's memory. The girl shows him a pebble and asks if it's his friend. She explains that she was walking along it on her way here, and that's why she's returning it to Noah. The boy says that this stone is not his friend. At that moment, the girl hears a voice saying that it's useless because Noah can't hear it. The guy asks if she's really not a sorceress, and then says that when their hands touched, she saw his memory, and he believes that an ordinary person is not capable of such a thing. The main character explains that she can't use something like magic, as it was her first time doing it. Then she asks if she can ask something too. Clarissa wonders if it was his grandfather in these memories, because it seemed to her that he treasured him very much. The boy explains that he was his mentor, and that he is no longer in this world, and as she said, he truly protected him. This man was his support. Noah says he said something he shouldn't, and then suggests she forget it. However, the protagonist doesn't understand why, as she knows nothing about him. She's certain that Noah is very sad and lonely, and therefore believes he shouldn't be left alone. The boy looked at the girl and didn't understand why she was walking toward him. She grabbed his hand and asked if he wanted to be her friend. Noah says he doesn't understand, and then suggests he stop talking nonsense and let go of his hand. She asks if he wants to be friends with her, and says it would be great to be friends. The boy says she simply doesn't know anything about him, then reveals that he's a monster, and frankly, he was going to die in the carriage she found him in. However, neither hunger nor cold defeated him, believing that if he were an ordinary person, he would have long ago departed this world. The guy says he's come to the even greater realization that the people who called him a monster were right. A woman even forbade her child to play with him because her dad said he was a monster, and it was true, and he told her not to go near him. Noah insists that it's better not to try to be friends with him out of pity, and if she doesn't want to get involved with a monster, he'll understand. And at that moment, he thought that the girl would change her mind and think it would be better this way since he can't have friends. Clarissa thanks him for his honesty, and then tells him that she thinks this topic is very painful for him, and thanks him for opening up to her. The girl says that she also wants to share something, and asks if he will listen. Sitting by the fireplace, the boy asks what she wanted to share. She explains that she's a captive of the Grezekai clan, and believes she should probably be dead, but she's here thanks to the Duke. The little girl says that her words will most likely sound strange, but now she feels much happier. The boy asks why she told him this. She explains that she wants to be friends with him. Then she asks how he feels about the prisoner and the monster, and also asks if he'd like to be friends with the prisoners. The guy asks, "What if that's the case?" The girl is surprised to hear this, and then asks him to think again. He tells her to do what she knows best. Clarissa excitedly asks if it's true that they're friends now. He explains that he simply realized that after his rejection, she wouldn't leave him alone, and then tells her not to cling to him. That day, the main character and Noah were scolded. The Duke said she should have told them she'd found Noah. Then it was decided the boy would stay at the estate until he recovered, and they were allowed to play. The main character thought that she had been having fun lately because she had been drawing a lot and also playing with the boy. Noah asks if she's really talking to the stone. She asks surprised if he didn't even hear it. He explains that he only senses its mana. The boy realizes a magical wave is passing between the girl and the red stone. At first, he assumed she was a mage, but he thinks it's something else. He understands that a normal mage simply uses mana, but he can't connect it to the mana stone. Noah asks if anyone knows she talks to the stone. She replies that he's the first person she told. The boy suggests they don't tell anyone else. The guy asks if she remembers how she said that she is happy now, and then says that if she does not want to lose her happiness, then she should keep the story with the stone a secret. The young man claims that those who wield power are alien to a peaceful life, and therefore suggests not realizing their potential. Clarissa says she's not quite sure what kind of power this is, and then explains that she's just talking to a rock. Hearing this, the guy says that no one should know about this under any circumstances, and then asks if she understands. At this time, the main character thought that she knew that, from the outside, she looked strange. The guy looked out the window and saw the carriage and realized that, judging by everything, he had arrived. The man tells the master that they made a serious mistake and asks him to apologize on behalf of the entire squad of magicians. Alistair Asto is the son of the late Yona. Asto is a highly skilled mage. The Duke has heard of his talent and character, considering him the strongest candidate for the position of commander. Maximilian says he hopes something like this won't happen again, and their trust in them won't be undermined. Alistair thanks the gentleman for his generosity and promises that those involved will be punished accordingly. The magician says that if he doesn't mind, he would like to assign magicians to investigate the case again this time. The Duke reports that the matter can be considered closed, and the group will be formed in the near future. Alistair says he wanted to ask a question, and as far as he knows, Noah is with them now, and asks if he's okay. Since he knows the boy has been through a lot, he's worried about him. Maximilian explains that, at the moment, his life is not in danger, and they continue to monitor his well-being and believe that he is coping well. Mag says Noah felt mature beyond his years, and now he understands why his father was so protective of him. However, he believes being a child didn't hurt. Alistair says that he got a little distracted, because the gentleman probably still has a lot of things to do, and therefore suggests ending it here, since he believes that they have discussed all the issues. The Duke asks if he'll stop by to see Noah. The mage replies that he doesn't want to disturb him and will stop by some other time. Sitting in the cart, the magician cannot believe that Noah is completely okay, and this gives him goosebumps. Clarissa excitedly said she had a delicious cookie and offered to eat it. But when she entered the boy's room, she saw that he wasn't there. The girl asks where he went. The maid asks if she's looking for the young gentleman who was in the room, and then says that he left that morning with the Duke. The knight informs the master that they have arrived at the fallen golem. The boy suggests checking his condition first, and then touches the stones. He says he feels immense magical energy in each stone. It's amazing that with such a level of magic, he's still asleep. The Duke says that, as expected, it will not be easy to lift him, and at that time, he looked at the guy and thought that he still seems like a child, and he does not understand how right it is to trust such a matter to a child. But he cannot say that he doubts his abilities. Maximilian understands that he is still one of the top 5 wizards, and at one time received recognition from Yona Asto. However, something worries him. Noah's mother, Adele, was such a powerful golem master that she became the leader of the wizards in her youth. It is said that no one in the world knew of her. However, it was impossible to predict that such a woman would pass away so early. About 10 years ago, monsters invaded the northern wall, and the Silver Demon War began. They say Adele went to war pregnant, and according to survivors, shortly before the end of the war, in the middle of the night, Adele's golem collapsed on the barracks, where she and the king were on the brink of death. She decided to save her child, and with great difficulty managed to extract the infant from the rubble. That child was Noah. The boy says there is no need to worry, because he does not even remember his mother's face, let alone what happened, and therefore believes that he will not interfere with the research and will send him a report every month. After these words, the guy asks the gentleman if he's still worried. He replies that everything is fine, and at this point, they don't understand why, but they look alike. The main character, enjoying the cookies, says he could have said he'd leave early in the morning. After all, she wanted to eat fresh cookies with him, but now they're cold. Noah says that she could have started eating it herself, but the girl objects and says that it tastes better together. Clarissa offers him a taste, and then tells him that they were prepared by a chef without Sheridan, and that his sweets are delicious. She then tells him that when they get to the Duke's estate, she'll show him everything, because it's even cooler there than here, and everyone is very kind. The girl says they still need to think about what they can do together. Then she says it's so spacious there, and it would be a lot of fun to play hide and seek. Noah tells her he thinks there's been a misunderstanding, and he won't be going with her to the Duke's estate. Hearing this, the little girl asks, surprised why he explains that he must stay to conduct research. That's why he came here after all. The main character asks if they're friends now, and then explains that the book said friends will always be together. He says they're friends, but they can't be together forever. Clarissa says she doesn't want to break up with him, but just wants to keep having fun. The boy asks why she started crying so suddenly, and she explains that it's because she's sad. Noah says they're not breaking up forever. Hearing this, the girl asks what it means. The Duke turns to the boy and reminds him that he said he would send a report every month, and then asks if it would be better if he came with the report himself. Hearing this, the guy asks in surprise, why all of a sudden, the gentleman explains that it will be easier to communicate this way, and besides, it seems he's become closer to Clarissa. The gentleman says that if they part so easily, both she and he will be sad. Noah tells the girl that he will come every month, and therefore they will be able to see each other. However, this irritates him. But you can't go against the Duke. Clarissa says it only works out once a month, and the guy says that just because they break up doesn't mean they'll stop being friends, so he thinks they're friends even from a distance. The girl asks if they'll definitely continue being friends. She says that when she returns to the Duke's estate, she'll write to him immediately and write every day. Benson tells Clarissa it's time to go and everyone is waiting for her. She says she's already leaving. The boy asks where she's going and also wonders if she's really leaving today. The girl asks him if he'll go see the fireworks with her. He replies that he won't go to the fireworks festival. The main character is surprised to hear this, but then explains that it's New Year's fireworks and thinks they'll be very beautiful, and he'll definitely like them. Noah thanks her, and then says he'd better go to bed early because he's very tired. He also hates crowded places. At this time, the main character was in deep shock due to 2 refusals. Benson explains that if he doesn't like it, there's nothing he can do, and then asks if maybe another time, and in the end the girl goes alone. When the girl saw the Duchess, she apologized for arriving so late, but she replied that everything was fine and asked if they could set out. At that moment, the knight looked at the girl and thought it was good that she had cheered up so quickly. The girl looked at the festival with delight, and the Duchess said that she thinks everyone is looking forward to the New Year's. The Duke asks how much time is left until midnight. Quentin replies about 2 hours. Benson asks if he should buy some hot drinks, since he saw several stalls, and tells his assistant that he will also go with him. The gentleman says that then they will have to look for a place to wait for them. Suddenly, the girl heard the boy calling for his mother because he saw a vacant spot, and he suggested she hurry there. The woman called him a brat, and then reminded him that she had told him it was dangerous to run like that, and offered to hold his mother's hand so he wouldn't fall. The Duchess tells the girl that they still have plenty of time, and therefore suggests that they sit down and wait, pointing to a free bench. However, the lady doesn't understand where the girl is looking, and when she looks the other way, she sees a happy boy walking with his parents. The Duchess says that there are more people than she thought, and believes that if they lose each other, there will be trouble, and invites the girl to take her hand. The Duke says that he understands that this creates problems, but Clarissa takes his hand too, and they walk together. At this time, the little girl thought that she had an incredible feeling, and she was very worried because her heart was beating so wildly. The main character remembers that, at the Grezkes, on the days of fireworks, she was afraid and hid. But now she is really looking forward to them. The Duchess turns to the little girl and asks her to come. She doesn't understand what to do as the girl has fallen asleep, as it was difficult for her to wait until midnight. The lady announces that the fireworks will begin soon. The Duke says they need to move to another location and asks for the child to be given to him. He takes the girl in his arms and says that they will go like this. The woman says it will be hard to carry her for long. He replies that she is light and everything is fine. The Duchess looked at the Duke holding the girl and thought it was like a father and daughter. And then she blushed, realizing that if he was the father, then she was her mother, and she couldn't understand why she was thinking such thoughts. After all, she thought she was acting like a fool. The lady thought that realizing her feelings for the Duke did not change anything, because she understood that she was still not a real duchess. The woman remembers that he said that in a few years he would definitely give her freedom, and she believes that such a life will soon come to an end and perhaps today, they are celebrating the new year together for the last time. The Duchess looked at the gentleman, and she wondered how long he had been looking at her. The Duke calls her his wife and says he has something he wants to tell her. She asks surprised what he wants to say, and he replies, he'll tell her later. Then he turns to Clarissa and says he knows she's awake. The Duchess asks the girl when she woke up. At that moment, the little girl thought the correct answer would be, when the fireworks started, and then pretended to be asleep. The girl apologizes and then says she thought they were discussing something important. The gentleman objects and says no, not at all. Meanwhile, the lady thinks this means nothing like what she expected. Clarissa looked at them and thought about the strange atmosphere between them, and thought it was because she'd interrupted the conversation. She also didn't understand how to improve their relationship. The little girl suggests they hold hands. The Duke, surprised, asks why. The girl replies that they themselves told her they should hold hands because there are so many people, and it's easy to get lost. And so she thinks they should hold hands. The Duchess says they're grown-ups now, so she thinks everything will be fine. Then she asks if the three of them want to hold hands like last time. Hearing this, the main character thought that everything was wrong, and that it wasn't she, but they who should hold hands. The girl said that the Duchess was too light, and that if the wind blew, she might fly away. Then she asserted that his lordship should take her hand. The gentleman wondered if she had really understood everything, and thought she knew them as a loving couple. But he thought it looked strange. He said that nothing could be done, and then asked the lady if she would mind if they held hands for a moment. The Duchess agrees, and at that time, she thought that she doesn't know what to do, because he's just holding her hand, and her heart is ready to burst. And the Duke looks as usual, and she just looks like an idiot who is worried for no apparent reason. When the main character sees the boy, she asks if she can really take the red stone. He replies that of course she can, since he can't communicate with it, and thinks he'll be better off with her. Clarissa says she wants to give him something too. He insists there's no need since he didn't give it to her to get anything. The girl asks him to wait, and then turns his back. A few minutes later, she says it's ready, and he asks surprised if she tied his hair. The little girl says that this is a sign of their friendship, and therefore asks not to lose it before they meet, and to be sure to wear it. The Duchess reports that Clarissa said goodbye to Noah. She then asks the girl what's wrong with her hair and suggests she sit down so she can tie it up. The girl explains that she actually gave one of Noah's ribbons as a token of their friendship. The lady says she's glad she's made a dear friend, then announces that she's finished and asks the girl if she likes her new hairstyle. She replies that it's very beautiful and thinks she has princess-like hair. The main character asks the lady how she learned to braid so beautifully and also inquires whether she practiced a lot. She replies that she braided her friend's hair often, and then suggests that if she liked it, she could braid it more often. At this time, a woman came to the estate and said that it was good that they arrived safely because she had arrived to meet with Duchess Sheridan. The guards say that they were not informed about the guests and offer to introduce themselves. The lady says she is a friend of Duchess of Acela, Sheridan Brielle Woods. At this point, the Duchess dozed off and then woke up asking how long the journey would be. But she suddenly realized the gentleman had been looking at her the entire time. The Duke says she can sleep a little longer since they're still a long way off, but the lady insists everything is fine and she's had enough sleep. The Duchess looked at the guy and thought that he had been busy with paperwork the whole way, and thought that probably a bit of work had accumulated during his departure. And he understood that when he returned, it would be difficult to see the Duke. The man asks his wife if she's busy tomorrow. She asks if he wants to assign her anything. The Duke explains that a visit to the city center is planned for tomorrow morning because the new year has arrived, and now that the war is over, it might inspire the townspeople, and therefore, he would like her to go with him. Maximilian explains that he's been thinking about going, but he thinks it would be better if the couple came, since people would be more pleased to see them there. She says she'll go because she's his wife. And at this time, the Duchess thought that she could not wait to go to the city with her husband. When they returned to the estate, Clarissa told the maid it was time for bed. The butler informed the master that while they were away 2 days ago, a guest had arrived who introduced herself as a friend of the Duchess. And the man explains that she arrived without an invitation and they wanted to send her away, but the weather suddenly turned bad, so they took her to a separate building. At this point, Brielle comes to them and asks how things are going, then hugs the Duchess and says she missed her. The lady asks why so suddenly, and the guest explains that she hasn't seen her friend in a long time and misses her. She then asks if this man is Duke Sheridan. The girl apologizes and then reveals that her name is Brielle and that she's an old friend of Acella's. She also says that she's sorry she showed up unannounced, as she was abroad and had just learned that Acella had gotten married. Brielle says her friend married such a wonderful man and didn't say a word to her. The Duchess invites her to talk alone because she believes they have something to discuss. When they entered the main room, the guest said that this room was better than she thought, since the appearance of the estate made her worried. Acella asks what is happening and what she is planning. The Duchess recalls that when she was little, a maid told her mistress that the girl's name was Brielle Woods and that she would be her friend. She then explains that she is the new maid's daughter and that she is smart for her age and thinks she will like her. Acella asks the maid if she thinks she'll like it this time and then suggests she give it a try. She picks up a chair and throws it at the girl. Daughter suffered a lot from this mistress because she was a very cruel person. When Brielle overheard her conversation with her father about having to go to a place like Sheridan, her father reassured her that they couldn't defy the emperor's decree. Acella screamed and said she'd rather die than go there. And when she saw the maid's daughter, she said she'd had a good idea. At this time, the lady tells the mistress that she went to study abroad and left everything behind as if she had run away, and then asks why she appeared now. The mistress apologizes for being too rude to the pig and for forcibly sending her here and now, showing up so shamelessly. She understands that she is deeply offended. At this point, the girl couldn't understand whether this was really the same woman she knew, and she wondered how someone could have changed so much in just a few years since she didn't know what had happened to her abroad. The lady explains that in a strange, unfamiliar country, she thought a lot about her and believes that she has been guilty before her since childhood, since she is the only one who was next to her. Acella claims that she will understand if she cannot forgive her, and she just wanted to meet and apologize before it was too late. Brielle offers the lady a handkerchief to wipe away her tears. Then she says that when she first came here, she really did blame her for everything, because it was so hard for her that she wanted to run away. The lady says that a lot of fun has happened over the past few months, and so everything is fine now, and then thanks the lady for apologizing and invites her to rest a little since she will order the guest room in the main building to be prepared. Acella grabs the girl's hand and then asks if it's time for them to stop. She explains that she's been thinking a lot about what would happen if she were discovered to be a fake. She believes that not only she, but also Earl Darrington would get into trouble. The Duchess says that this is a deception of the king and the Duke, and therefore she wants to fix everything before it gets worse, and then offers to reveal the truth and tell the Duke, and then ask for forgiveness. Brielle suggests that the lady wait, as this is too sudden. The Duchess says she understands her confusion, but it's not an easy decision for her either. She believes they can't keep it a secret forever. Then she asks if she's worried about her mother. The lady says she'll explain everything to her father, and he'll continue the treatment. Then, surprised, she asks if she really wants to remain a duchess. The girl objects and says no, because she wouldn't dare. She tells the guest that she's so kind-hearted that she thinks it's impossible. She suggests thinking carefully, because who knows, maybe this is the last chance to tell the truth. Acella tells the maid that Brielle has changed a lot, and that she used to simply answer yes to everything she said. Then she asks if it's because she's been pretending to be her all this time and thinking she's the real duchess. The maid insists that no matter what she is, Madame Acella. Hearing this, the Duchess asserts that it's time for her to regain her position, as she believes the scoundrel will take all the blame anyway. The Duchess exclaims that the sandwich smells absolutely disgusting, and then asks what's in it. The maid, surprised, says, "That's odd, since she definitely asked for anything smelly to be removed," and then announces that she'll replace it immediately. The lady throws this food at her and then asks if the amount has gone away, because she thinks that if someone finds out that she has toxicosis and then asks if she will be responsible for it. The Duchess says she's in a bad mood and tells the maid to get lost immediately. She clutches her stomach and asks how this could have happened to her. She insists she must take the Duchess's place as quickly as possible. The next morning, the main character says that she was so tired from the journey that she slept late today because she believes that prisoners must adhere to the regime and therefore must definitely get up early tomorrow. When the girl saw the softy, she asked what had happened to her. She asked Clarissa to help the lady. Then she reported that the Duchess was pretending to be someone else, and that the one who was supposed to be the Duke's wife had suddenly arrived and declared she wanted to take the position. Softy says that's exactly it, and no one must know. Clarissa says she understands, and then asks if that means the current Duchess is a fake. The doll screams and says that their Duchess is not a fake, because as soon as she arrived at the mansion, she went through difficult times, but still did everything in her power, and she always saw her efforts. The doll says the fake wants to deceive the lady into making her out to be a criminal, and calls her a vile human being. The girl says the inner wall is right, and then declares that she will do everything possible to help the Duchess. Clarice asks the doll where to begin. She replies that the lady wants to tell the Duke the truth, but to avoid this, she has come up with the idea that only a girl can do it. In the morning, the Duchess thought that today, she and the Duke had to go to the village, and believed that perhaps this was the last chance to reveal the whole truth, and she had to tell everything today. Suddenly, the little girl turned to the Duchess and said she had been expecting her. When the Duke arrived, he said Clarissa would be with them today, and then apologized for not warning her. The little girl explains that she also wants to go to the village, and asked to come with them. After all, she's never been to the village before, and won't bother them. Brielle claims that she will not interfere with them in any way, and is therefore very glad that the girl will be with them. The lady watching the girl thought that there was nothing she could do now since she couldn't spoil this atmosphere. When they returned from the village, the girl thought about what she hadn't been able to say because of Clarissa, but now she knocked on the master's door. Just then, the little girl entered her room. The lady, surprised, asks the girl what has brought her to this hour. She replies that she had a nightmare and was frightened, then asks if she can sing her a lullaby. The lady invites her to come. Brielle doesn't understand why she feels like Clarissa intervenes every time she's about to tell the Duke everything. However, she thinks it's just an excuse. The main character kept preventing the lady from telling the Duke the truth. The doll, however, praised the girl because she thought she was doing a good job and called her a genius for not letting the Duke and Duchess be alone. Softy asks if she'll go to the mistress again tonight. The girl replies that she'll come to her tonight to read a book, then looks at her watch and realizes it's already time. The doll says that it seems she has little magical powers, and therefore she will sleep a little, but the girl can call her when she needs her. Clarissa heard someone knocking on her door, then opened it and asked if the Duchess had arrived. The woman asked if prisoners lived in that room, and then offered to talk. When she saw her, the little girl thought that she looked almost like a duchess, who was supposed to marry a duke. Acella says that she hadn't heard anything from Brielle for several days, and wondered if something had happened to her. But as far as she knows, every time she was with the Duke, the girl interfered with them and seemed to not want the truth to come out. The lady looked at the little girl and said she was right, then said Brielle was stupid if she was caught by a child. She then asked what she should do with this firmware, since she thought it would be bad if she continued to interfere. The Duchess saw the fairy tales and the diary with the drawings. The girl said they were hers and asked to give them back. The lady asked if she wanted to continue living with them at the estate. The lady says that they are suitable for each other because she is a prisoner who was supposed to die and a swindler who takes the place of the Duchess. The girl insists the Duchess isn't a fraud. The woman says that with such low birth, even calling herself a duchess is a fraud. Then she declares that when she becomes Duchess, she'll kick Brielle out of the estate, and the same goes for a filthy criminal like her. The woman looked at the diary and said that she understands that they are on good terms and thinks this is wonderful, since they will both sit in prison and draw their absurd drawings. At this time, the main character thought that the inner wall was right, because the fake wanted to deceive the lady into making her look like a criminal. And the little girl thought for a second that she looked like the Duchess, but she was completely different, and that's why she hated her. Clarissa claims that the Duchess will not be kicked out because she is the only Duchess in this estate, and this woman will never be able to displace her. So Brielle entered the room and stopped this woman, since she entered the room with Benson. The Duchess asked him to stay outside. Then she turned to the woman and told her not to touch the child, as this matter was theirs alone. The lady asks Clarissa if she was very scared, and then apologizes. She also asks if she can leave Rosalie for a moment. The girl looks at her in surprise, and she tells her not to worry, as they'll just have a little chat. Acella says it's very touching, because the con artist and the criminal have become close. Then she asks if she's afraid that others will find out who she really is. But the lady insists she's saying this for her own sake, since such actions are harmful to her child. And then she says she might be right, since she's a simple swindler, but she's currently the mistress of this house. Brielle asks if she thought the servants' eyes and ears belonged to her. Then she suggests they stop and return to the county, and she'll order a carriage for her. Hearing this, the mistress objects, and then asks if she's crazy, believing she can't leave in case her father finds out. Brielle asks if she thinks the count didn't know, and then asks if he knows about the baby's father. After thinking for a moment, she says that can't be true since she doesn't even know who it's from. The Duchess tells her to leave because she won't tell her anything, and then asks who she is, and if she feels sorry for her. The woman screams and asks how she dares pretend to be kind and understanding, and then says that this always infuriates her. The girl tells her mistress to calm down because her voice is too loud. Hearing this, the lady screams and says she's not a count's daughter, but a servant's daughter, and then asks if that's true. At this moment, Duke Acela arrived, saying he was just in time, and then reporting that he had already heard this woman. The man replied that he knew, and the woman was surprised when she heard this. The gentleman explains that he knew from the very beginning that his wife was not the real Acela Darrington. Hearing this, the Duchess was surprised and asked how he explained that their marriage was arranged by the royal family, and then asked if they really thought they could fool everyone with a simple bride swap. The Duke orders the maid to be brought. When his mistress sees her, she is surprised. Maximilian reports that she confessed that the Darringtons took her wife's mother hostage and threatened her for years. The mistress asks the maid how she could hand over their county. The Duke says he won't catch much, simply suggesting they return to their place immediately. Her punishment will definitely come later. Acela begs the Duke for mercy, and then screaming announces that she should have become his wife, because she is the real Duchess, and not that homeless girlie's. The gentleman says that if he hears one more insult directed at his wife, she will go not home but to prison, and therefore suggests not to test his patience. Brielle turns to the Duke and apologizes, then says she didn't mean to deceive him, but really wanted to tell him everything. She objects and says these are just excuses, but she's truly sorry. The lady explains that she's been deceiving him all this time and continuing to occupy the Duchess's place. Maximilian asks if she heard him, and then informs her that he wasn't deceived because he knew everything and married hers. The gentleman says he hid the fact, so it turns out he was the one cheating. She asks surprised why, because she doesn't understand that he knew she was a fake, and wonders why he married her then. The lady asks if he felt sorry for her or simply didn't care. And at that moment, she thinks she doesn't understand what's wrong with her because she couldn't thank him. Maximilian explains that he did not feel sorry for her, and then remembers that when he first saw her, while he was removing her veil, he realized that she was trembling all over. His Majesty asks who they take the royal family for, because he does not understand how they could find a similar girl and pass her off as a bride. The Duke says they look alike, but then thinks they're completely different. The Emperor says they're completely indistinguishable. Then he reveals that she's most likely the Count's illegitimate daughter, as silver hair is extremely rare among ordinary people. His Majesty asks what they will do. He believes they dared to deceive the royal family, and therefore the death penalty is the only option. The Emperor says the same applies to the false bride. But Maximilian objects and asks for their marriage to take place, then explains that he doesn't know why, but has decided they must marry. At this point, the Duke doesn't understand how to explain all this to her. Then he says he can say for sure that he didn't do it out of pity. The guy turns to his wife and says that he knows he's late, and then asks her to tell him her real name. At this time, the girl does not understand what to do, because she did not want to stand in front of him with such a look, and then says that her name is Brielle and begins to cry. The lady apologizes and then explains that she got something in her eye. Meanwhile, her husband hugs her and tells her that she is now Brielle Sheridan. The main character writes a letter to Noah about how she wanted to write to him as soon as she arrived at the estate, and therefore apologizes for being so late. The girl writes that they had a guest, and that's why she didn't have time to write. It turns out this guest is a terrible person because she wanted to drive the kind Duchess away, said mean things to her, and tormented her. Clarissa writes that there's nothing to worry about, because when she pestered her, The Duchess appeared and protected her. Then she heard from Rosalie that the Duke had kicked out that bad man, and then asked him what he thinks about it, since he thinks they're both so good. The little girl writes that being around such people makes her incredibly happy, and she loves them all very much. And so she became thoughtful, because she doesn't know what she can do for the estate. The man tells the girl that she does everything well, and that she is doing well. When the Duchess saw the little girl with a broom, she asked in surprise what she was doing. She replied that the gardener had taught her how to sweep snow properly. The man says Clarissa said she wanted to learn, and since it was safe, he agreed. He says the girl is a fast learner, and seems like she'll soon surpass him, then smiles. The Duchess says Clarissa is stunning. The little girl asks if they went out together today. The lady explains they just met on the way, and the gentleman says it was a chance encounter. A few minutes ago, Brielle had become curious about the Duke's activities and wondered if she should ask him to go with her to Clarisse. The young gentleman was thinking the same thing. The doll told the girl all this, and also that when he hugged the lady, her heart began to beat so hard. The main character looks at this couple and thinks they wanted to deceive her, but she knows the truth, and therefore she decides not to interfere in their relationship. The girl says that she has to sweep the snow near the bell tower and then suggests that they talk to each other, since she is very busy. Brielle asks, "What's wrong with Clarissa?" And the gentleman says that he has no idea either. The Duke turns to the girl and calls her name, and upon hearing this, she was surprised, because it was the first time he called her by name. The gentleman says he was contacted yesterday by a capital hospital and told that a room for Miss Woods is ready. He then informs him that she will be able to receive appropriate treatment. Hearing this, the lady was overjoyed, and then thanked the Duke, saying she didn't know how to repay him for his kindness. He insisted he simply did what he had to. Maximilian says that once her mother is hospitalized and her condition stabilizes, she can visit her. He says he still needs to speak with His Majesty about punishing the Darrington family. Then he asks if she would mind going with him to the capital. Brielle happily said she didn't mind. And then she thought about how happy she was to finally see her mother and couldn't wait for that meeting. The Duke looked at the lady and thought he had misunderstood. At this time, the main character turns to her grandfather and asks him to look, because she believes that she has found a treasure. Maximilian looked at the girl's hand and didn't understand what was so special about the old glove. The gardener, surprised, says that his wife gave him this glove before she died. He lost it a few days ago and was so upset, then asks how she found it, since he couldn't find it, even though he tried so hard. At this time, the stone guard says that he lost her near the bell tower and was looking in a completely different place, and considers it very depressing to watch this. Clarissa explains that she was just sweeping near the bell tower and saw it, and then says that, in any case, she is glad that she found his treasure. The man claims that this little girl is a treasure in her own right. Hearing this, the Duchess says she thinks something similar happened last time. Someone lost the recipe in the kitchen, and Clarissa found it. She doesn't know how she did it, but the servants simply adore her. Brielle says that she feels like the atmosphere in the estate has changed a lot since Clarissa's arrival, and believes that it is her power that illuminates everything around her. The lady says that this little girl is so kind and innocent, and then asks what the gentleman thinks. Clarissa turns to the Duke and says she's done her business. He pats her head and then says he still has some left, so he'll go and she can stay outside if she wants. Maximilian says he's leaving this girl with his wife. The lady says that of course she'll take care of Clarissa. Quentin looked at his master in surprise and said he had returned early. He turned to his assistant and said he needed to write a letter to His Majesty about when he would see him to discuss the punishment of the Darrington family. At this time, Maximilian remembered the words of his older brother, that he should not forget that when this girl turns 18, he should bring him her head. The Duke says he has something to say about the prisoner. Meanwhile, at the royal palace, Chefos, a servant, tells the Queen that this is why Duke Sheridan has requested a visit to the palace. She asks, surprised, if her son has granted this permission. The servant says that His Majesty has ordered the palace to be prepared for the Duke, Duchess, and the captive. She says she understands and tells him he can go. When the servant left the office, he saw the boy, and he wondered if he had been standing there all this time, and thought that the Dowager Queen Mother was too concerned about her eldest son, but paid almost no attention to the youngest. Mother turns to Prince Valentine and then asks if he remembers Maximilian. The boy replies that he does, because he is his half-brother and the one who betrayed his mother and older brother and was imprisoned in Sheridan. The queen says it's very good that he remembers, and then informs him that this dangerous man is a threat to power. Therefore, she suggests that he should not under any circumstances engage with him. Then she asks if he understands. Her Majesty says she knows her son is smart and obedient, and then says he can go. Hearing this, the boy was surprised because he wanted to hug her. The gardener asks if Clarissa is really leaving them. The cook asks if she's going away for a whole month and doesn't understand what they can do since they have everything planned. He also tells her to remember to try hard in the capital. The girl tells him not to worry, as she'll return completely healthy. The Duke says it's time for them to go. Sitting in the carriage, the main character thought that today she was going to the capital with the Duke and Duchess. Initially, they were supposed to go together, but the Duke said that living permanently in cold Sheridan was harmful to their development, and at the same time, they would buy baby clothes in the capital. So he let the little one go. The young lady thinks that being away from Sheridan will be sad, but when she thinks that everything is so that she grows up to be a cool 18-year-old girl, it is not so sad. 2 weeks later, the lords arrived at the Eastern Palace. Clarissa says it's just like a fairy tale, and then asks if they'll really be living there. The Duchess says that she will visit her mother in the capital's hospital and will return soon. At this time, the girl heard the knights say they couldn't understand how His Highness could have housed the Duke in this palace. They also couldn't believe he was given such a small palace when he deserved to live in the main building. The main character realized that His Majesty was the one who didn't want her alive, and she believes that because some criminal arrived, the Duke and Duchess will live in such a miserable place, and she's a fool because she understands that in such a situation there's no joy to be had. The Duke turns to Clarissa and asks if she remembers why she came to the capital. She replies that it's because she won't grow up healthy if she continues to sit in the cold Sheridan. Maximilian says that this is why she should try a lot of things and grow up healthy and not think about anything because he thinks it is harmful to hers. The little girl insists she'll remember it. The gentleman says he'll be gone for a while, so she can go for a walk, but on one condition. She can't leave the garden. Clarissa tells the Duke that she will work hard to grow up healthy and will eat well and read, and therefore asks if he can convey her words to His Majesty if he meets him. Maximilian agrees. When the girl was left alone, she told Softy that she could come out, and Pebble said she thought she'd go crazy from the heat. The little girl says that the Duke gave her permission, and therefore suggests exploring everything there, and then says that she took a backpack with her. While walking through the garden, Clarissa saw a huge tree and said it must be very old. Softy showed the girl that under its roots there was an entrance to a tunnel, and from there came the voice of the stone. The girl couldn't understand why a talking stone was in such a place. She wondered what it might say. But suddenly, she thought something might happen, since she hadn't even received permission from the Duke. Clarissa muses that she will go there briefly to look at the stone, and then asks how there could be something dangerous in the palace. The little girl says she's quick and will come back immediately if she senses danger. When she entered, she realized it was darker than she thought, and she couldn't see anything. The girl asks the Softies if they have arrived yet, and she replies that she thinks they are approaching. The main character thought she was having a hard time, because she'd been running around the garden all day and was exhausted. But suddenly, she felt an obstacle in front of her, and then she saw a blonde boy. Clarissa thought that she had never seen such handsome boys, and thought that he was like an angel descended from heaven, but she didn't understand who he reminded her of. The young gentleman asks who she is and why she is staring like an idiot, and then asks if she is going to apologize. The girl apologizes and explains that she was walking in the garden and accidentally wandered in because she didn't think anyone would be there. Then she asks if he's in a lot of pain. The boy tells her not to touch him, because judging by her clothes, she's the daughter of some palace servant. He then insists that this time he'll close his eyes, but he thinks she should be more careful. The guy says that if she tells anyone she saw him there, he'll kill her. Hearing this, she thought about how he has the face of an angel, but a terrible personalities. The young gentleman thinks that she doesn't know who he is, and therefore won't be able to tell him anything, and then he leaves. The girl screaming after him says he's Prince Valentine. Hearing this, he asks in surprise how she knew, as he believes not every nobleman would reveal his identity. At this point, the main character doesn't understand what to do, as she was so surprised that she even said it out loud. Then she remembers that Noah said she shouldn't tell anyone about her ability to communicate with stones, but she realizes that if she lies to the prince, she could be punished. Clarissa explains that she simply looked and understood. He surprised asks if she really recognized him. At that moment, the girl looked at him and thought that he looked happy. The young gentleman asks her name. She replies that her name is Clarissa and that she has arrived with the Duke and Duchess. The boy, surprised, asks if she arrived with the Duke of Sheridan. Then he says he's never heard of them having a child and wonders if she's related to the Duchess. The girl wanted to answer him, but he said that he was interested in something. But suddenly, he heard the maids calling him and said that it was time for him. And then he turned to the little girl and invited her to come to this place tomorrow. The young gentleman asserts that this is an order, and then asks if she understands. As he leaves, he says that if she doesn't come, he will indeed kill her. At this time, the main character thought that she was in trouble. Sitting in her room, Clarissa thought about how creepy this prince was, but she couldn't understand why he wanted to meet again. Softy suggested that maybe he liked her, then told her she'd be keeping an eye on him. Clarissa says that this can't be, and thinks that the software probably misunderstood. Meanwhile, the red pebble asks how much longer they'll discuss this. Then he says he understands they're excited about this new meeting, but suggests they switch to another topic. Softy asks the stone what's wrong with it, thinking they haven't talked for long enough. It replies that it didn't like the boy, and that even though he's a prince, he's arrogant and rude, and then says that Noah is much better. Softy says he's just jealous that Clarissa has a friend, besides this baby cat. Hearing this, the girl says she and the prince aren't friends, and then remembers that if you think about it, something similar has happened before. Earlier at dinner, the gentleman asks his wife if she's visited her mother. She thanks him, and then reports that she didn't even notice how time flew by while they were talking. The Duchess says her mother is also very grateful to him and apologizes for not being able to express her gratitude in person due to her condition. He insists there's no need to worry, as he believes her health is far more important. The Duke says it's hard to adjust to the rhythm of the capital. After living in the county, Brielle thanks him for his understanding, and then explains that her mother brought a friend with her, so it wasn't as difficult. Hearing this, the man, surprised, asks if this is a friend from her homeland. She replies that he's right, and explains that his name is Harry, and that they were very close as children. Maximilian says that since he's Harry, that makes him a man. The girl smiles and says they're definitely brother and sister, having known each other for so long, and he's like a son to his mother. The Duchess said she was very glad to see him after such a long time. Then she saw her husband's expression change and asked if she had said anything wrong. The gentleman objects and says that he asks for forgiveness because he believes that there is nothing worth worrying about. At this point, the protagonist thought that she thought the Duke had been in a bad mood back then too. However, she doesn't understand why he's acting this way, as she thinks it's not so bad to have many friends. The next day, the girl ran to the meeting place, and when she saw the guy, she said he had arrived first. He screamed and asked if she knew how long he had been waiting for her. The girl apologized, and he said, "Okay, let's move on," because he thought she had arrived anyway. Clarissa thought she was indeed a little late, but that was too much, since it wasn't easy to get here quickly. Then she said there was no set time, and she tried to arrive as early as possible. The girl says that if he sets a time, she'll definitely be there earlier next time. The guy is surprised and then asks if they'll meet again next time. The prince says he really didn't set the time and therefore apologizes for the unfair accusations. Hearing this, the protagonist realizes he's not as creepy as she thought. The guy says that, in any case, the reason he called her today, but suddenly he felt pain in his hand, and the little girl asks in surprise if he is okay. Valentine says he thinks he accidentally cut himself. Clarissa, hearing this, suggests he wait a bit, then reaches into her backpack and grabs a bandage, disinfectant, and bandages. She then comments that it's a good thing she brought a first aid kit. The girl asks if he can give her his hand so she can help him. Hearing this, the boy is surprised, and then says it's okay. It's just a scratch and he'll figure it out. But she insists that's not right, saying that, even if left untreated, a small wound will hurt. Clarissa treated the boy's finger. Meanwhile, he thought he'd never heard anyone say that even a small wound will hurt if left untreated. The young gentleman recalls that when he broke his knee and told his mother that it was very painful, she asked if he came only because of this. The main character tells him it's done and he won't be sick anymore. He looks at her confused as to why he feels this way. The Duke and his companions stayed in the capital in the small palace. And on the morning of the fourth day, the master and his assistant were trainings. Quentin says he can't defeat the Duke. The gentleman insists he should better protect his left shoulder and suggests he be more careful. The boy insists he'll try harder. Maximilian says that they will return to training at noon and therefore suggests that they rest. Suddenly, the Duke saw the lady and then greeted her. She asked if he was returning from training. The gentleman replied that he had trained briefly with the knights, and then reflected on how he had trained with them for many hours and hadn't washed. Maximilian says he hasn't rinsed off yet, and therefore understands that he might smell bad. At this point, the girl thinks that she shouldn't think that way, because the Duke is very nice. Brielle assures him that everything is fine, and tells him not to worry, as she doesn't smell anything. He asks if she's going to the hospital, and says it's later than usual today. The lady explains that before leaving, she wanted to see Clarissa, but luckily her fever has gone down. But she's still worried. She thinks the girl was overtired yesterday, and she's also curious why she slept in some water channel. Yesterday that day, Clarissa went out into the garden for the third time, and at some point, everyone lost sight of her. It was getting dark, rain was coming, and the knights began searching for her. After a long search, they found the sleeping baby. At this time, the Duke thought that she could have simply fallen asleep while playing, but he was worried that she was found in that channel, because as far as he knows, the place with which he is connected, he needs to check. The gentleman says he'll take care of Clarissa and tells her not to worry. Then he says her mother is waiting for her, so he'll walk her to the carriage. And sitting in the carriage, the lady says that she actually wanted to ask for something, but she doesn't know if she can afford it. He suggests that she speak. Brielle asks if she can stay at the hospital for one night, then says that doesn't mean she'll sleep there, explaining that Clarissa is simply sick. While she's in the capital, she'd like to spend more time with her mother. The Duke asked about that man Harry, because he was curious if he would be there too. She explains that Harry always stays until dinner and then returns, but she's curious why he suddenly asked. Maximilian looked a little embarrassed and said he understood. He assured her everything was fine, and she could sleep wherever she wanted without even asking his permission. When the lady left, the gentleman did not understand why, after the words that Harry always stays until dinner and then returns, the bridge became much easier. The Duke saw a canal under a tree and remembered that Clarissa had been found there. Then he decided to check it out and headed there. He saw a shadow and realized there was a person there. The prince asks who's there. Seeing him, the master thought the child was Prince Valentine. Meanwhile, Rosalie takes the girl's temperature and says she's finally asleep. Then she asks if her nose is stuffy and her throat is sore. The little girl assures her that everything is fine and that nothing hurts anymore. The maid says it's a relief, and then says that exploring the surroundings is fine, but she doesn't think it's worth going to such dangerous places. She asks if the girl knows how worried everyone was about her. The little girl apologizes and then insists she'll be more careful. Rosalie says she'll go to the kitchen and make some soup for her to eat with her medicine, and suggests the girl rest. When Clarissa was alone, she thought it was a good thing the maid hadn't asked. Softy asked if she planned to continue hiding her meetings with the prince. She replied that she shouldn't tell anyone as she had promised. The girl thinks that if she says that she met with the prince, everyone will be shocked, but she thinks that he will not come there again anyway. 2 days earlier on the water channel, when a girl bandaged a boy's finger, she asked in surprise what was wrong with him, since his face had turned very red. The prince turned his head away and thanked her for the treatment. The little girl said it wasn't worth the effort, and then said that if he were hurt again, she would definitely heal him. The boy asks if she wants him to get hurt again. Clarissa asks why he called her anyway. He replies that it doesn't matter, and explains that he was curious about something. Valentine doesn't know how to explain to the girl that he had no reason, because he just wanted to see her. But he understood that he couldn't tell her that, and asks if she said that she came with the Duke and Duchess. He also asks if she lives in Sheridan. Clarissa claims she lives there, and at that moment thought she was a prisoner. The boy says he heard it was very cold there. The main character insists that Sheridan is simply a wonderful place. It's a little cold there, But when it snows, everything turns white and incredibly beautiful. The food is delicious, and the people are kind and welcoming. The girl reports that she heard that before the Duke's arrival, Sheridan was exactly as Uncle Quentin said. The boy, surprised, asks what that means. The little girl explains that Sheridan used to be as he was described, cold and stern, and they say that the Duke made him so good, which is why they call him the Keeper of the North. Valentine, surprised, asks if this is true. The girl explains that she only heard it from Uncle Quentin, but she believes it's the absolute truth, as the Duke strives for Sheridan's good every day, and the people love and respect him wholeheartedly. Clarissa says that the Duke is the best of all the people she knows, and at that time, she thought that she was embarrassed to say that, and then she says that she wants to become like him. The prince asks her to tell the truth, and then asks if the Duke ordered her to do so. Hearing this, the girl is surprised and asks what he's talking about. The guy screams and tells her to stop pretending, then tells her he betrayed his brother and mother, which is why he was exiled. He then asks if he's now a respected cool adult and wonders if she thinks he's so easy to fool. The main character insists she's not lying, and that the Duke is truly a good man, believing he simply misunderstood. He asks, surprised, why she continues to defend him. Valentine looked at the baby and said that everything was clear to him because he believed that she was with him from the very beginning, and then turned around and left. Clarissa asks him to listen to her, but he tells her not to follow him because he has nothing to talk to her about. At this time, the main character thought that she did not want to argue with him because she just wanted to clear up the misunderstanding about the Duke, and she does not understand what to do because if she lets him go, she will never see him again. The little girl asks if he will come tomorrow, and then says that she will wait. The next day, Clarissa waited a long time for the prince in the canal, but he didn't come. She grew tired and fell asleep right there, eventually falling ill. Lying in bed, the girl thought that she would never meet him again, and she was so glad that she had a new friend. Suddenly, the girl heard someone knocking on her door, and then heard the Duke's voice asking if she could come in. She invited him in, and when the doors opened, she saw the Duke and the prince. The gentleman says she has a guest. The girl is surprised to see the boy, but the Duke says he'll come and they can talk. Clarissa apologizes for not being able to stand up and greet him because she's still feeling a little dizzy. He says she's fine and can sit up, then tells her he heard the Duke say she has a cold. The girl, screaming, explains that she's feeling better now that her fever has gone down and that he can check it himself. He says he understands everything and that she shouldn't get so close to him. The little girl smiled, and he asked why she was laughing. The girl replied that she was very happy, because she thought she would never see the prince again after that day. Then she said that she truly was happy that she could meet him again like this. Clarissa thanks the boy for coming to her. However, she's curious why he came to her with the Duke. She explains that she means the prince hates him. The girl insists she's not asking. She's just curious. The guy says it's nothing special, that he just bumped into him by chance, and that's why the Duke brought him to her. And then he thinks about how he was actually caught trying to sneak in. A few hours ago, when the prince saw his master, he thought his black eyes and hair meant he was Duke Sheridan, and he remembered that, just as his mother had said, he looked truly terrifying. At this time, the boy does not understand how he could meet the Duke there, because he believed that he had no sense of compassion at all, and thought that he would definitely accuse him of trying to get into his castle, and then decides that he needs to run away. The Duke says he greets His Majesty, Prince Valentine. Hearing this, the boy, surprised, asks if he knows him. Maximilian says that he may not remember, but they already met when he was very little, and then says that he has grown a lot since their last meeting. At this time, the prince thought that this was true because Duke Sheridan was not at all what he imagined. The gentleman extended his hand to him, telling him it was dangerous up there, and asking him to come up to him. He, screaming, said he shouldn't offer him his hand because he thought he could handle it himself. At this time, the Duke thought that he was wondering how Clarissa was able to fall asleep in the tunnel, and then asks if he is here to see the girl. The prince, surprised, asks how he knew about this. The gentleman says he'll show him to her room and tells him he can come with him, of course, if he wants. As they walked down the corridor, the servant said that he was very grateful to the master for that day, and then thanked him for taking care of his family in the capital. The knight asks the master when the day's training will begin, as he would also like to receive instruction from him. Hearing this, Valentine thought that the Duke was the most cold-blooded person he knew. Yet he understood that everyone respected and loved him. He thought that this couldn't be true since his mother had told him many times that he was a criminal who betrayed the royal family and was ultimately rejected by his own family and imprisoned in Sheridan. The prince remembers that his mother said that if he wanted to live happily, he had to obey the laws of the royal family, and so he never left the castle and played with useless friends and didn't study more than necessary. The boy believed it was because his mother's will was also the will of the royal family, but he considered himself lucky to have met Clarissa, and believed that if she had told him herself that the Duke was a bad man and cruel, this strange feeling would have passed. However, Valentine understood that if he had known that he would feel this way, he would not have followed him. The main character asks him in surprise. He replies that he doesn't know what's really true or who he should believe. The boy thought that up until this moment, he believed everything his mother said, but he doesn't understand why. Now he has a different opinion and doesn't know what to do now. Clarissa says she doesn't quite understand what he's talking about, and then asks if it wouldn't be better if he found the answer himself. Hearing this, the boy is surprised, but she assures him that he himself said he doesn't know whom to trust, and believes that means he just has to check everything out and decide for himself. The girl believes that if he finally finds the answer, things will get easier. He asks if she wants him to decide for himself, but at this point, he can't understand how he could go against his mother's wishes, believing it pointless. He realizes she's right. Valentin says that if you think about it, he doesn't know anything about her, only her name, and therefore offers to tell him because it doesn't look like she's the daughter of a servant, and he's interested in whether she's a relative of the Duchess. Clarissa insists she hadn't intended to hide it, and was planning to tell him right away, pausing briefly to find the right words. He insists he doesn't know what's wrong, but won't be angry with her, so he suggests they just tell him. The girl says she's actually a prisoner from the dreamscape. Hearing this, the prince asks, surprised what she's talking about, and then says she shouldn't joke like that. The little girl apologizes for saying this earlier and reveals that her name is Clarice Lennon Grezakai. She is the princess of Grezakai, who will be executed when she turns 18. Hearing this, the prince stood up so hard that his chair flipped over him. At this moment, a maid enters the room and announces that she has prepared some cookies for her guest. Meanwhile, the prince has left. Rosalie asks in surprise what happened and why he ran away. Meanwhile, in the royal palace, the Duke says that the punishment for Earl of Darrington will be the confiscation of property, including his estate. However, His Majesty claims that this is too lenient a punishment for trying to deceive the royal family with a false bride, and asks his brother if this is true. Maximilian thanks him for overlooking his stubbornness. The emperor says it's all right, because he thinks he had a good time too, since thanks to him, he learned about his brother's tastes. His Majesty asks if he has a question regarding the captive from Grezakai. The Duke replies that, as stated in the letter, he has come to request temporary identification for her. His Majesty agrees and says he was quite surprised to receive this letter. He then informs her that, until Clarissa turns 18, her identity will be linked to Duke Sheridan. The Emperor says something he still doesn't understand, because he believes that even temporary identity verification is no longer a simple matter, and asks why such complications. Maximilian replies that all children in this country are guaranteed safety and education, but it is difficult for her to exercise these rights because she is a prisoner, and therefore, until the child grows up. But suddenly, His Majesty interrupts and asks surprised what he's talking about. He then explains that children need to be provided with safety and a good education, and this only applies to those with a future. He reminds him that this girl is a child who will be killed as soon as she turns 18. The Duke assures His Majesty that this is all true, but she still has 9 years before that moment, and he believes this is ample time for her to learn and blossom. He then declares that he does not wish to deprive her of this opportunity. Maximilian claims that she will definitely become a great adult when she turns 18, and therefore asks her to do him a favor. Hearing this, the Emperor smiled and said that this meant that everything would be even more fun than he expected, and then said that he understood what they meant, brother. His Majesty informs him that he will send someone to Sheridan later and give him an answer on this matter. Then he asks if he doesn't understand that this problem isn't so easily solved. The Emperor says that if he's finished chatting, he can return as he's already tired of working late, After all, he believes lack of sleep is bad for his skin. Maximilian then announces that he'll be taking his leave. When the Duke stepped out into the corridor, he heard a girl call his name, and when he looked back, he saw a surprised Queen Davina. She said it had been quite some time since their last meeting, and she had heard that the Duke had arrived at the castle, but she never imagined she would actually run into him. Max says he's insulted, and then asks her to watch how she addresses him. He asks if she's not the queen of the country now, and claims it bothers him that people in power address him so informally. The queen says he's still the same, even drawing a line between them, and then asks if he's really okay. She reminds him that they were previously engaged. Meanwhile, Brielle was walking down the street, thinking she couldn't sleep today, which she found odd. But suddenly, she overheard the maids talking about how this was the talk of the town. The Duchess thought that she wanted to take a walk alone, but even that didn't work out. The maid, crying out, asks if it's true she didn't know the Duke and Queen were previously engaged. She then reveals that they were quite close in their youth, and that Her Royal Highness unexpectedly broke off the engagement and married His Majesty. And rumor has it, the Duke still harbors feelings for her. A few days later, on the morning before leaving the capital, the protagonist looked at a pile of gifts. The Duke said that this time he bought everything that couldn't be found in Sheridan. Brielle insists that Clarissa should be happy. The maid, surprised, says there's even a music box there and thinks it's cute. At this point, the girl doesn't understand whether she really wants all this, as it looks so expensive. She also wonders what will happen if Sheridan goes bankrupt because of her. Clarissa thanks the gentleman and says it's not much, and he assures her he understands everything. The girl replies that she hasn't said anything yet. The gentleman thinks this isn't enough, and he needs to go to the store again. Hearing this, the main character objects and assures him that this is enough. Maximilian says that the carriage is not ready yet, and therefore suggests that the girl wait a little. Standing near the carriage, the girl realizes the prince hasn't arrived yet, and she's leaving soon. However, she understands that it's only natural that he decided not to see her off, since she's actually a prisoner. When she told the prince this, she saw his expression for the first time. The main character believes he's probably very disappointed in her. Because he's of noble blood, he certainly won't want to see a captive like her again. So she understands him, but she still can't help but be upset. Clarissa wanted to wrap the toy in the carriage, but it seemed to be stuck. Suddenly, she felt someone helping her, and she heard a voice saying how hard it must be to be so clumsy. The main character saw the prince, and surprised, asked why he had come. The boy asked if she wanted to see him. She countered saying no, not at all, because she was a prisoner, and therefore thought the prince would hate her. Since that day, he hadn't come to play with her. Valentine calls her an idiot and claims she said she was the one who was held captive, then asks how he could see her right away. He explains that he came to her in a hurry because he unexpectedly learned she was leaving today. The boy reminds her that she told him that he should make decisions for himself because then he would feel better, and explains that that is why he has been thinking about it a lot in recent days. The prince asks if she knows what the civil service exam is. He says it's a national exam, and to pass it, he needs to master all the arts and sciences and even know history. Moreover, a person's personality matters too. The young gentleman claims that this is why it's an extremely difficult test, and if she passes it, not only will her name be in the newspaper, but everyone will respect her. And then he asks her if she understands this. The girl says it sounds great, and the prince says he's going to take this exam, and even if his mother objects, he'll definitely pass and become the best. When Valentine saw the Duke, he cried out and said he would personally decide what kind of man he was. He then informed the girl that he would personally monitor her behavior on behalf of the royal family. Clarissa asks if this means the prince will be coming to Sheridan. He replies that this isn't some kind of pleasure trip, as he intends to keep an eye on her. In any case, he wants to say it was nice meeting her, and he looks forward to seeing her again. Soon after leaving the capital, a warm spring arrived in Sheridan. The knight tells the girl to stop running, but she ran like that in order to meet Noah. The blue-haired boy says she shouldn't greet him like that. The girl explains that she really wanted to meet him and couldn't help herself. Clarissa asks if he wants to report to the Duke first. He says he does, but thinks it's nothing special, so it'll all be over pretty quickly. She suggests they check the growth of the beans she planted that evening. The boy looked at her and said she was dressed more brightly than usual and was in a good mood. The girl explained that it was a special outfit she bought and invited him to look at it, then asked if he liked it. Noah says that it's very sweet, and then asks the lady if she really got dressed up like that because he came. The little girl replies that she needs to make a good impression on the teacher who's coming today. Hearing this, the boy, surprised, asks if she wants to study. Clarissa reminds him that she told him that she wanted to prepare for the civil service exam, and so she talked to the Duke, and he provided her with a tutor. Noah says he hopes he likes it there. I think he must be a good person. The butler tells the gentleman to wait, because the Duchess and the Duke will be arriving soon. Meanwhile, he thinks that he's finally in Sheridan. Several months ago, news broke that the Duke of Sheridan was seeking a tutor. But the capital's eminent teachers were reluctant to travel to Sheridan because it is located in the north, is on bad terms with the royal family, and they feared the ruling dynasty's wrath. So the news reached Lockhart while he was tutoring the children of local aristocrats. But when he read the newspaper, he thought there was no information about tuition, except that he was 10 years old and offering such a large salary, more than a tutor's salary in the capital. Mr. thought about how the youngest prince, secretly raised by the royal family, wasn't 10 years old, and at that moment he remembered the letter he received from his younger brother, who had fought in the war against the Dreamkite. The man thought the rumors about the Duke and His Majesty's poor relationship were false, but he realized they seemed to be good friends, and he wondered if there was some reason to hide this from the public. But at the time, he didn't particularly consider whether this student could be the younger prince. The teacher believes this is definitely true, as he doesn't understand why they would otherwise hide information and pay such a large sum of money for it. He believes the Duke and Duchess probably have no more important child. The man believes that this is a great opportunity for him, because if he has experience teaching the prince, all the aristocrats of the capital will fight to hire him. Lockhart believes that he can finally fulfill his dream. The butler informs the gentleman that the Duke and Duchess have not yet finished another meeting, and so he will have to wait for a while. He assures him that everything is fine since he arrived an hour early and will therefore wait as long as necessary. And the butler thanked him for his understanding and said that the child really wanted to say hello to his tutor and asked if he didn't mind. Hearing this, Lockhart agreed, and at that time thought about whether it was okay to meet the prince in advance. But when he saw the girl, he was surprised, and the little lady said that her name was Clarissa, and she was glad to meet her teacher. The man thought about calming down, then said he was glad to see her too, and that his name was Lockhart, and he would be her tutor, so she could just call him Lockhart. She said he could call her by her first name too. The teacher says she's very kind, and then thinks about how surprised he was that she was a girl, but her behavior and grace show that she has royal blood in her. He thinks maybe she was raised that way, or maybe she was a princess from the start. The man thought that no matter what he had to show this child everything he could during these 3 days of trial lessons, and then he told her to take care of him starting tomorrow. After talking with the teacher, the girl went to look for Noah. When she saw him, he asked if she'd said hello to her tutor. The little girl replied that, although she'd been nervous about being alone, luckily he'd turned out to be very kind. Clarissa says she's a little nervous because classes start tomorrow, and she's curious about how she'll do. The boy tells her not to worry, as he believes all a teacher needs from a student is a desire to learn. The little girl says that she is not as smart as Noah, and the teacher can hold classes with her tomorrow, and say that he does not want to teach her, because she understands that the Duke was able to find him even despite difficult times. But the boy assures that this will not happen because he believes that anyone would like her if they got to know her better, and therefore suggests that she just do what she usually does. The next day, the main character eagerly awaited her meeting with the teacher, but when she saw him, she thought he was in a bad mood and recalled that yesterday he had certainly been kinder. Lockhart asks what she's doing, and then insists it's time to start classes. At that moment, the girl realizes she's made a mistake and still can't believe it. The teacher was told that this girl was the last princess of dreams, and he thought that if he had known about this from the very beginning, he would never have come here. Lockhart thought the war with the Grezekai had happened not long ago, and that his younger brother had gone to fight in his place. Since it had killed an unprecedentedly small number of people, he believed his younger brother would return safe and sound. However, only his body immersed in eternal slumber returned. The man remembered hearing something from a fellow soldier. The one who took his brother's life was Prince Grizekai. He believes this child's brother killed his younger brother. But the difference is that his brother died while his sister is alive and well, and therefore he will never forgive her. However, the teacher convinces himself that this does not matter, because he knows that this child will die anyway, and he just needs to teach her half-heartedly, and then in 3 days, he will be fired. Clarissa asks the teacher if he can begin the lesson. He suggests starting with learning to write her full name. And when the girl wrote it and he read it, he saw her older brother and his younger brother before his eyes. And then he asked if the lady could write her brother's name. At this point, the man saw that she was shaking all over from the fact that he'd merely mentioned her brother, and therefore assumed she'd only be a little upset. But he realized that it must be painful for her to even think about it, because her brother likely died before her eyes, and therefore found it much more interesting than he'd thought. The main character tells him what she wrote. He says it's excellent and asks if she could write her mother's name. She looks at him in surprise, and he asks if her mother's last name was Grizekai, and wonders if she participated in the wedding ceremony. Clarissa explains that she knows little about her mother because she has never seen her since she was born. At this point, the man realized that he'd never heard her tell time before, which meant she was illegitimate. Then he said he could explain everything to her and offered to watch. Lockhart reports that the last Queen of the Dreams was, as far as he knows, from a very influential aristocratic family. This means she grew up in a family as influential as the king. The teacher says that her mother gave birth to her, and the queen knew about this and was afraid that her mother would also gain power, and that is why she killed her mother, and she died because she was born. Hearing this, the protagonist was surprised, and the teacher thought she should be even sadder and suffer even more, since he believed it was still not enough to ease his anger. Clarissa says it's his teaching method, and she feels like he's trying to offend her. He asks why she took it so personally, and explains that he was only trying to explain the facts to her, but he understands that it's difficult to accept. Lockhart asks if she shouldn't know this, even when others don't know about her mother's unjust death, because she believes there is no one left who could understand this except her. The girl says he's right, and the man says he's glad she finally understands him, then announces that from now on they'll be holding Grizekai lessons. He then suggests solving a simple math problem. After the lesson, the Duchess says that she came because she heard that her lessons were over, and asks how the lesson went, since she thinks that it must have been difficult, since this is all the first time for her. The lady says that of course studying is hard, and suggests that it should also be fun, since Clarissa is the one studying, and she is the one worrying. The girl tells the Duchess that it was truly wonderful. She explains that she understood everything they covered, and really enjoyed the lesson, and therefore thinks the Duke and Duchess shouldn't worry. The little girl apologizes and says she already promised to play with Noah, then asks if she can go. Lady replies that of course she can, and suggests she be careful. After talking with the girl, the Duchess realized something was wrong. Seeing her, the Duke asked what had happened. At this point, she was at a loss as to what to do, as she still felt awkward when they were alone. Brielle understands rumors that the Duke still hasn't forgotten Her Majesty the Queen, but she thinks now is not the time. She then says she came to listen to Clarissa's story since her classes are over, but she thinks something's wrong with her because she didn't look her usual self, and suggests that perhaps she didn't enjoy the class. Hearing this, the gentleman says that in that case they don't need such a tutor. The lady says maybe she just imagined it. She understands how difficult it was to find a teacher, and then asks if they could find another if they terminated his contract. The Duchess explains that she doesn't want to limit Clarissa's education simply because of her misunderstanding. Max says that if that's the problem, she shouldn't worry. The Duke reports that His Majesty responded to their request today and shows them a letter. He says it's not quite what he wanted, but if it's true, there will be no more problems finding teachers. Having heard this, the lady does not understand what he is talking about. But when she read the letter, she was surprised. The next day, the tutor asks the girl to talk about taxes. He suggests looking closely at the figure, as it states that the taxes collected by the royal family from Grizekai from each region were converted into gold coins, including cash for harvests and raw materials. Lockhart wrote down the total amount, which was converted into the total production of each region. Little girl insists the sum doesn't add up. He says it's true, but then asks if the taxes collected by the royal family aren't greater than the output supplied. The teacher says the reason this happened is quite simple. The royal family and the aristocracy used taxes for their own needs. Therefore, the common people couldn't even afford food, and children born to common families were sold into slavery. Hearing this, Clarissa says that this is very terrible, and the tutor agrees with her, and then claims that it was her family who did all this. Lockhart says he doesn't blame her, then asks if she's not the last surviving member of the royal family. He believes she's also responsible, and that's a fact. At this time, the main character thought that the teacher was right, and although no one knew about her origin, the fact was that she was a princess of the Dreamkais. Clarissa asks the teacher if she can somehow repay all these people. Hearing this, he thinks about how easy it is to control her, and then replies that, of course she can. But then a pebble hits him in the mouth, and he can't say another word. The tutor looked out the window and saw the boy who had thrown the pebble at him. He asked in surprise who the child was, and what the strange mask was on his face. The girl approaches him and reminds him that he promised to sit quietly during her class. Noah insists that he did, even when the teacher started poking his nose into matters unrelated to the state exam. He then asks if he wasn't patient enough. The boy says that he should be ashamed of himself for neglecting his duties as a teacher. Hearing this, Lockhart calls him an arrogant child and then grabs him by the shirt. The girl tells the gentleman to calm down, but he pushes her and screams at her to get lost. The teacher asks how a small child dares lecture an adult, then touches his mask and takes it off. When he sees his face, he asks in surprise, "What's wrong?" At this point, the main character realized she couldn't see Noah's face at all, and the teacher screaming called him a monster. He turned to the girl and said it was all because of her, and added that if he'd known he'd be teaching her, he never would have come here. The man crying out asks how she even dared to think about the state exam. He claims that there are people who died unjustly because of the Grizekai royal family, and then asks how she plans to live so shamelessly. The teacher believes she should spend the rest of her life in atonement and suffering, and then he leaves the office. Noah helps the girl up and asks if she's okay. He then tells her he simply must tell the Duke about this, as he believes she can't tolerate such treatment. Clarissa says the teacher was right, but that doesn't change the fact that she's the princess of a sinful country. And when she thinks about the people who suffered at the hands of her family, she considers that maybe she doesn't deserve to live as well as she does now in Sheridan. The boy insists that the princess was definitely born in the lands called Grizekai, and believes that this shouldn't constrain her. However, after all, anyone can leave the lands of their birth and live happily if they have the desire to move on. The main character thanks the guy for these words and then asks if he's trying to reassure her. He explains that he's saying this because he would do exactly the same in her place. He then tells her that she has no such obstacles. The girl realized that the barrier was his mask and then said what the teacher had said. Noah interrupted her and said she had nothing to worry about since he was already used to it. Then he explained that in some ways, he really is a monster. Hearing this, Clarissa screams and insists that he should not say that again because he is not a monster, and he says that the girl did not see his face. The main character explains that he doesn't really show it to her, and therefore believes that she has no other choice, and asks if she can take a look. But if he doesn't want to, then she doesn't insist. Noah says that his mother's curse is on his face. He never saw her, but people said that she was a powerful sorceress whom everyone was looking for, and that she was the only master of golems. The boy says that apparently she, like other sorcerers, was overcome by a thirst for research, and she transplanted the golem into her own child, and so he was born neither a man nor a golem, but a real monster. Noah explains that to his mother, he was just another experiment. Hearing this, Clarissa protests with a shriek, then explains that while she knows little about his mother, she certainly didn't think of him as an experiment, and she thinks she definitely loved him. The girl says that if his mother really abused him for this reason, then she must be a very bad person. The boy says that she is the only one who said something like that about his mother, because everyone does nothing but idolize her. Noah asks the princess if she wants to see his face. She says yes, if he doesn't mind. The boy says he thinks he can show her, and then asks if she's scared. Then he shouldn't force her. She assures him she's not scared at all, and promises he won't be. The boy says he'll close his eyes so the princess can see everything. And then he thinks he can't believe he suggested it. But now he feels uncomfortable. He's even afraid she might be afraid of him. and then he takes off his mask. Clarissa enthusiastically says it's great and claims it's very beautiful. The boy is surprised, and the girl asks if she can touch it just once, as she thinks it's very beautiful. The guy screams and tells her not to make fun of him, then asks what is beautiful, and claims that she is simply ugly. The main character touches his face and says, "He's truly beautiful." She says she understands he suffers because he's different, but she loves how the stones on his face sparkle like jewels. Noah looked at the girl in surprise and said that she really is strange because he can't believe that she likes what others are afraid of. The girl says that she does not understand those who are afraid and believes that they simply do not know what beauty is because these are the most beautiful and incredible stones she has ever seen. A few minutes later, the main character saw the boy put his mask back on and then surprised asked why he did it. Noah informed her that that was all for today. Clarissa says she wants to see more, and he assures her that's enough for today, and that if she wants, he'll show her next time. After all, no one but her has ever seen that face. The main character excitedly asks if she can touch the stones on his face next time. He replies, "No problem." At this moment, a maid enters the room and asks the girl if everything went well today, then informs her that her lord the Count has something to tell her. Upon hearing this, the girl became frightened, thinking something had happened. At this time, the teacher was packing his things and thinking about the curse, and all because of this prisoner and this monster. He felt he needed to leave this cursed suburb immediately. The butler asks Mr. Lockhart, and at that time, the man thought that Clarissa had already told the Duke about what happened today, and he did not know what excuse to come up with. The butler asks the teacher if he is free this evening, and then informs him that a very important person has decided to come to this estate today, and a banquet is scheduled for this evening, and the Duke and Duchess have said that they would like to see him there. Lockhart asks who this important person is, who's arriving. The servant replies that he wasn't paying attention, and that they said he was royalty. At this point, the teacher was thinking about how he could dine with the royal guests, and considered it a one-in-a-million opportunity. The butler asked if he could say that the master would be there too. Clarissa said anything about class today. The butler says he didn't hear anything specific, and then asks if something happened. Lockhart thought he couldn't miss the opportunity to sit at the same table with royalty, and believed that if he was careful, his path to success was assured. However, he was a little uneasy about Clarissa and the child, and believed everything was fine because he had prepared everything in advance. The teacher came to the girl and apologized, and also asked her not to tell the Duke about what happened, since he believed that he was not so busy, and then asked if he would be angry if she began to bother him with such trifles. The tutor thought that there was no chance that the captive would be a guest at the evening dinner, and therefore he could not wait to surrender to this dinner. Lockhart has prepared himself, but he doesn't understand why no one is coming for him. He's been waiting for so long and hasn't received any news. He also understands that it's impossible for the dinner to be cancelled unexpectedly. He thinks they might have simply forgotten about it. The man thought that he couldn't just wait, but then he went out into the corridor and saw Queen Davina. He was also surprised because this girl was with the Queen. Her Majesty congratulates the girl and says that when she said that she would become a sealed person when she turned 18, His Majesty was very impressed, and therefore he decided to personally take her under his wing. The Queen says that she sincerely hopes that she will become a wonderful person, and then offers to tell her personally what she wants to learn or achieve in the future, since until she comes of age, she will be under the protection of the royal family. Clarissa thanks the lady for her generosity. The Queen says she heard they're having some trouble finding tutors, while Lockhart, crying out, says it seems the butler forgot to call him. Then he assures her everything is fine, and he's glad he was able to come. The tutor greets His Majesty the Queen and informs her that his name is Lockhart, and he is Lady Clarissa's teacher. Her Majesty asks if they have a tutor. The man replies that one isn't enough. Of course, but that's how it is. He explains that he was always worried about teaching such a talented child alone. The teacher says that he can now finally team up with teachers from other disciplines to provide a better quality education, and then says that he is really happy about this and asks the girl if she agrees. Clarissa agreed, and he offered to work hard together, and then said that he would not dare to disappoint her expectations. The Queen says that she thinks she should step away for a while, and therefore asks to wait for her. And at this time, all the guests have also left. Lockhart doesn't understand what's going on, and then screaming asks Clarissa if she really told him everything. The protagonist says she's very sorry she couldn't keep her promise, and then announces that she no longer wants him to teach her. She believes that perhaps the method of atonement he spoke of is truly correct, but she wants to become a wonderful person for those who trust her and for those who protect her. Hearing this, the teacher couldn't understand how the girl who had been trembling at his mere words was now acting like this. And at that moment, he thought about how he couldn't possibly let go of a child under the royal family's protection. Lockhart turns to the girl and asks her to listen, then says that he is very sorry and offers to discuss everything again. At this point, the Duke approaches him and tells him to stop. The teacher claims it's all a big misunderstanding, and he doesn't know what Clarissa told him. Then he explains that during teaching, it's natural for children to resist a little, and so they may sometimes slightly exaggerate what they've said. Clarissa right here. And now what lesson he taught her, and then asks why he can't do it in front of him. He says there's nothing to discuss anyway, and therefore suggests they leave. The Duke says that the reason he is so kindly sending him away is because it was his fault, because he thinks it was a mistake to let someone into the palace without conducting a thorough investigation. And then he says he hopes he'll get a good job outside these walls, and if he can find one at all. Rosalie asks the girl if she and Noah decided to go look at the stars today. The main character says that when Sir Benson was showing her around, he mentioned that the knights' quarters had a window where they could be seen very clearly, and the maid says that sounds wonderful. Clarissa says that she feels really good when she brushes her hair, and then says that she thought that Rosalie was the queen of brushing. The maid says that she is very pleased that their sweet girl praises her, and then asks how she always manages to say such nice things. The main character says she's sure there are those who want to say something bad to her. The maid is surprised to hear this and asks the girl why she's saying such a thing. Clarissa replies that it's because she's the last member of a sinful dynasty. She knows she shouldn't listen to these harsh words, but she still feels very weak, and that makes her afraid. The girl asks if it's selfish for her to want to be a wonderful person. Rosalie says she understands what the princess means, because she believes she can't just forget everything by saying she couldn't help it. Because sometimes being happy feels wrong. The protagonist asks Rosalie if something similar has ever happened to her. She replies that it's been almost 20 years, and when she was young, she worked in the Marquis of Kern's mansion and took care of a 4-year-old girl. But one night, when she wasn't around, someone kidnapped the girl who was sleeping in her room, and the whole thing was so carefully planned that even the knights didn't suspect a thing. Rosalie noticed it too late and was never able to find her. Hearing this, the main character can't believe something like this happened to the maid. The woman says she still can't forgive herself for that day. She believes she shouldn't have stayed up all night and been with her, and if something like that happened again, she would have done the same. Clarissa takes the woman by the hand and assures her that it is not her fault, since she herself said that even the knights did not notice anything. The girl says that even if Rosalie had been there, she still wouldn't have been able to deal with those kidnappers on her own. The maid says she knows, but the pain of allowing this to happen is so excruciating that she can hardly bear it. That wonderful silver hair and sky blue eyes. If only she could see her again, she would be incredibly happy. Hearing this, the little girl was surprised, because it seemed to her that the girl who had disappeared looked like a duchess. The maid dressed the girl and said that it was quite chilly at night, and therefore she should take care and be sure to wear a coat and hat to avoid catching a cold. Before leaving, Clarissa asked Rosalie if she wanted a hug. Upon hearing this, the woman smiled and then hugged her, who thanked her. Until then, the main character had constantly wondered if it was selfish to want to be a wonderful person. But after Rosalie told her story, she realized that despite carrying the pain of her past, she still had the strength to live her life to the fullest. The girl believes that such a person simply cannot be selfish, and therefore she too will become a wonderful adult when she turns 18. Clarissa thanks the woman and says she's the best teacher she could ever have. Rosalie asks where such a good child came from, since she's sincerely grateful for those words. When Clarissa saw the Duke and Noah, she asked in surprise if they had arrived together. The Duke explained that he had only popped in for a moment and had met Noah as he passed by. He says that he is going to the knight's quarters, and Benson will go with her, but still asks her to be careful. And then he tells the guy that he should dress warmer, because the temperature at night is quite low. The boy says it's okay because he doesn't think it will make him sick. Meanwhile, the girl thinks Noah must still be feeling awkward. Clarissa took the boy's hand and urged them to walk quickly. The Duke looked at them and thought it was very sweet, and they looked very happy. The Queen says she thinks they were the same as children and asks if he remembers. The Duke, surprised, asks Her Majesty what she's doing at such a late hour and without an escort. She apologizes and says there are already too many eyes watching them today. The Queen explains that she wanted to tell him something important and therefore hopes that he will spare her a minute. The gentleman says that he and his assistant Quentin will wait for her tomorrow and then leaves. Davina protests, screaming, and explains that she said it was important and no one else should hear it. Lady replies that it's only for a moment, since she's come all this way, and then asks if he wants to send her away. Maximilian announces that the minute is already ticking. She suggests getting straight to the point and asks if he really wants to raise the Dreamkai princess. Hearing this, the gentleman was surprised, and the lady said that she knew that this girl was sweet and smart, but she was saying this for his own good, and then said that he should execute the princess right tomorrow. The Duke says he doesn't understand what she's talking about, but he can't do it until she turns 18. Her Majesty asks if he knows why the Emperor decided to become her guardian. He replies that it was because he asked for it. She objects and assures him that he merely asked to sponsor the duchy. The Queen says that His Majesty truly expects her to achieve great things, and then asks if he is absolutely sure that he does not know the reason. Maximilian, surprised, asks what she's trying to say. She replies that he wants the Duke to love this child because he believes that even for an ordinary child, such growth is astonishing, and Clarice truly has the desire to work hard. Davina is informed that His Majesty has given her wings so that she can fly as high as possible in the allotted time, and so that despite this, he will be proud of her and will eventually love her. Her Majesty asks if he now understands that His Majesty wants him to fall in love with Clarissa and personally end her life, thereby making him suffer even more. The Queen claims that this is why she needs to be executed as quickly as possible to prevent this from happening, and then says that she will find a way to get him a special permit and asks what he thinks about it. Maximilian confidently replies that he can't do that, and the lady is surprised to hear this. He suggests pretending this conversation never happened, and that if that's all, he'll leave her, but the Queen grabs his hand and tells him that she is truly worried about him. At this time, the Duchess came out into the corridor and was surprised to see them. Davina asks the lady what she's doing at such a time. She replies that she can't sleep and decided to go for a walk. Then she explains that she didn't mean to interrupt them and is very sorry, and then leaves. The Queen smiled and asked what they should do now, because she thought the Duchess had misunderstood everything, and then said that it didn't matter because it was an arranged marriage anyway. Maximilian takes his hand back and then leaves. Meanwhile, the Queen thought that everything between them was real. Brielle doesn't understand what to do, having witnessed such a scene. She believes the rumors the maids were spreading are true, as they still can't forget each other. But suddenly, the Duchess tripped and fell. Her clothes got dirty. She broke the lamp and thought that she looked very pathetic now. But she did not understand why she ran away like a fool, and thought that she had definitely made a bad impression. The Duchess thought that Her Majesty was truly beautiful, and it was no wonder the Duke couldn't forget such a beautiful bride. But compared to her, a woman of obscure origin had nothing to offer or demonstrate, and therefore she was no match for her. Brielle thought that she needed to go back and clean up the shards, because she didn't think anyone could see her like this. At this point, the Duke approached her and asked if she was okay, as he thought she was hurt. She assured him everything was fine, and felt there was no need to worry. The lady says that the important thing is that he came here, and then claims that Her Majesty will probably not like it. Maximilian replies that he doesn't care. The girl, surprised, asks how he can care, since even she knows there are two of them. The gentleman interrupts her and says that recently Her Majesty merely gave him advice regarding Clarissa's future, but her opinion slightly diverges from the will of the royal family, and she has come to express it to him. The Duke explains that their engagement was merely formal and that he had no feelings for her. He then apologizes if he acted unfairly. At this time, the girl does not understand why he constantly confuses her, because she begins to build hopes and becomes disappointed, but she does not want this anymore. Brielle tells the Duke that she is truly grateful that he accepted her, despite her unclear origins, and then says that she wants him to stop caring about her because they are not a real couple. The Duchess recalled the gentleman's words that he planned to declare this marriage invalid and make her free in a few years. The girl asks if he wasn't planning on making it seem like their relationship never happened. And then she thinks about how she said that raising the issue she'd been trying so hard to avoid. The lady thinks that instead of suffering again later, it's better to accept the pain now. And then she assures him that everything is fine, and he doesn't need to apologize because she already knew. The gentleman objects and says that he did not mean it that way, and explains that he mentioned the annulment of the marriage because she did not want it, and he knew that one day he would have to let her go. Maximilian says that he knows that these words are a manifestation of his selfishness, and then says that he does not want to lose her and wants her to continue to stay in Sheridan. After these words, the Duke embraces the girl and tells her there are shards of glass behind her. She asks what his recent words mean since she's not an aristocrat and doesn't understand when people speak in innuendos. So she asks him to tell her exactly what he meant. Maximilian says he loves her. Hearing this, the girl doesn't understand how this is possible because she thought these feelings weren't destined to exist in reality, and that the Duke couldn't love someone like her, and she was sure. Brielle doesn't understand why she realized it only now, because he always looked at her, and therefore believes that she was the one who closed the door to his heart. The lady says that she likes him too, and then starts crying and says that she always likes him and she loves him. And then the gentleman kisses the girl. Meanwhile, the children are looking at the stars. The little girl asks if the nearby constellation is called Corona. Noah explains that there's a legend that some god sent a crown into the sky, in memory of a deceased princess. Clarissa says that after his words, she can indeed see the crown, and then asks how he knows so many constellations. He explains that this is basic knowledge for mages. Suddenly, the boys saw that Sir Benson was very tired and snoring because he was asleep. This knight who had come to guard the children fell asleep faster than they did. The boy asks if she should also go back and go to bed, since she understands that it is already late, while the girl objects and says that everything is fine and she doesn't want to sleep yet. She also understands that he is leaving tomorrow morning and therefore wants to stay together a little longer. Noah insists she can't be stopped, then says that just a little while longer, but soon he'll send her back. Hearing this, the girl smiled and agreed. The protagonist thought about telling him before leaving that she would be executed upon reaching adulthood, but she realized that for now, all Noah knew was that she was a Dreamkai prisoner. She also didn't understand why she couldn't tell him the truth, but she felt it was time to do so. The girl realizes he's confided in her and even shown her the face he's always hidden. She then asks him to listen, but he interrupts her and says he wanted to ask her something. The boy looked at the girl and asked why she was scared. She explained that everything was fine, and then asked what he wanted it. Noah says that he wants to know if she keeps her promise to him about hiding her ability to communicate with stones. Hearing this, Clarissa realized he was referring to the conversation about how no one should know she was communicating with the stones. She then replied that of course she hadn't told anyone. He said that was very good and suggested they continue. The main character says she's been curious about something for a while now, and then asks why he can't let others know. Of course she's worried people will find it strange, but she doesn't understand why he's slandering her like that. Noah replies that she was bound to find out about it someday, and then asks if she remembers what he said about his mother being the last golem master. Clarice says that of course she remembers, since his mother was a remarkable person. He claims that she also possesses the abilities of a golem master. The guy says he thinks she can be called a full-fledged master. The little girl is surprised when she hears this, and then asks what that means since she doesn't understand how she can be a master. Noah insists she keep her voice down because it's too loud. Clarissa, surprised, says that the golem's master has the ability to control enormous stones, while she can only speak to them. The boy objects and explains that to be precise, the golem master can imbue the stone with his magic and give it life, and then claims that there is already one like that next to her. The main character asks if he's talking about Melanie. He claims that they are proof that she's a golem master. The little girl was surprised to hear this, and then asked if he really possessed such an incredible ability. He insisted that, in any case, If he continued the story since the death of his mother, the mages had been desperately trying to find a new golem master for several years. Noah says that if they find out about her, they'll definitely take her to the mage's castle. The girl, surprised, says she's a prisoner, and the Duke won't allow it. The young man claims that if the Duke does not allow it, they will not shy away from any means, even if it means starting a war. Hearing this, Clarissa realized that something so terrible would happen again. I think it would all be because of her. She was very scared, but Noah assured her that everything was fine and nothing would happen. The guy apologizes for being too careless and thinks he shouldn't have told her about it. He says he's sorry and then hugs the girl. Clarice says that even if she hides carefully, those people will find out everything and then asks what she should do, because she doesn't want Sheridan's people to die because of her. The main character thinks that it would be better for her to be on her own until she comes of age, but the guy interrupts her and says that then he will run away with her and take her to a place where no one will find them. Nayo understood that he had to answer for his words, because he already had an idea, but he was not sure that Clarissa would agree, because it was very dangerous.